will call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular board meeting in Nevada Irrigation District, July 14th, 2021. You'll all join me with a salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Division 1.
Here.
Division 2.
Here.
Division 3.
Here.
Division 4. Here. Division 5.
Here.
President accounted for. Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I'd like to pull a couple of the items
Okay.
for brief discussion.
Yes,
Just items,
Switch items.
they're minor, but 4, 5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6. Okay, anybody else?
I had a question on item 7.
Okay.
Jennifer, I sent you an email about those, but it was late.
I have your answers too.
Oh, you have my answers. Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, great.
Okay, so that means we're pulling it or not pulling it?
Yes, we're pulling it, because I
Okay.
want to hear what the
All right.
answers are. Or not.
Oh, no, it's fine, it's
Okay, great. Thank you.
worth desire.
Thank you.
And I move that we approve items 1 through 3 on the consent agenda.
For a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Yes.
We have public comment.
Public comment.
And Mr. Chair, we also skipped general public comment too.
Oh,
We'll
geez.
circle back to that though.
Take me back to school.
We're testing this morning.
All right, we'll backtrack then.
Take a roll call?
We'll take public comment on the consent agenda first, and then we'll go back to public comment, not on the agenda. Is there any comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary, you'll call the roll, please.
Division 1.
Aye.
Division 3.
Aye.
Division 5.
Yes.
Division 4. Aye. Division 2.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, now at this time, if there's any public comment on items not on the agenda, today's agenda, star 9 on your phone. We have Michael Hillwell. You hear me, Michael?
And
Morning.
good morning. I just want to take a moment to compliment and thank Chip Close and his staff on the fine job that they did over the last few weeks in presenting the information concerning the scarcity of water. That's very complex information. It's hard to get at least hard for me to get my brain around it. And it's also very difficult information because of not only the management of the water, but as discussed by the board members, the impact on the customers and residents of the district. And I just wanted to compliment them on what I thought was a fine job in a very difficult situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else like to comment on any item not on today's agenda pertinent to NID? Star 9 on your phone. Louise Taylor, go ahead, you're on.
Thank you. This is on the agenda. I wanted to compliment Shannon Wood on the excellent job that she has done for us on the Loma Rica project. I met her in 2017. She has carried this through beautifully. She has been honest with us. She is very responsive to all of our questions, and we have had many. And she's just done an excellent job. You should be very proud of her and the work that she does for NID. And also, I think generally you have a very good staff at NID, all the folks that I've ever dealt with. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, all the staff. All true. Okay, anybody else like to comment? Anything not on the agenda today? Star 9 on your phone. Anybody in the audience?
I know, we have the audience.
Forget the audience now, we're so zooming in. Okay. All right, anybody else? Last chance to make public comment on items not on the agenda. Star 9 your phone. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 4, the consent agenda. 4, 5, and 6. You want to take them one at a time?
Yeah, that would be great. Just clarifying questions that I have on the, item 4 on the French Dam. The item calls for the construction of new gauging stations downstream of the dam, and notes that there are environmental mitigation, monitoring, and other permit requirements. But there's no mention of a CEQA document or NEPA document. So I was wondering, how is that working? I mean, why are we being able to do this work without citing the relative overarching documents that the mitigation and permits are derived?
So this is, you want me to?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this was a CAD exempt project because there is an existing, measuring station there. We're just upgrading it and moving it just 40 to 50 feet just downstream. So we submitted that, notice of exemption and filed that. I don't know which state didn't receive any responses back. Excuse me. In addition, we have 1600 401 and the 404 permits that we received for these. Those had monitoring requirements. And so we're following those as part of the permits that were needed to do the work of the measurement station because it's within Wilson Creek.
I see, so as long as it's within the general vicinity.
Yeah, we're basically right in the same spot. We're moving this slightly down because it's too close to the dam, so we're moving it down about 40 to 50 feet. And then we're making it slightly bigger to meet our flow requirements in the future.
Okay, and the same permits, it says that these were the
Correct.
permits that were pulled for the original project?
For this project, correct. We received
For
all
this
these
particular
permits.
project, not the previous one?
No, for this particular project, we got brand new permits. We're the 404, which is the core one, that's the nationwide permit, the non-reporting one, number 3, I think it is, and then we also have the 1600 stream alteration agreement with Fish and Wildlife, and then the 401 for water. And those all have requirements.
And just to add a little context, this is allowed under section 15302 of CEQA, so essentially it provides an allowance for categorical exemption for utility projects. They're essentially maintaining or replacing what is basically already there. And so in this particular situation, the reference to the mitigation and monitoring is in reference to those mitigation monitoring requirements for the permits that were
From the
required.
initial permit? Okay, well, terrific, thank you. That was just a clarifying question I had. And then on item 5, the Mount Pleasant Road annexation, on the resolution, the second,
Go ahead, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
President, would you like to take each item separately for vote?
I was gonna take them all at once and then vote on them, but that's it.
It's entirely up to what you would like to do.
That was my thought, but I didn't clarify it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, sorry about that, okay. So on the Mount Pleasant, annexation, the second whereas on the resolution, it says, whereas notice of intent to adopt this resolution of application has not been given to each interested and subject agency. And is that right?
It is. I checked into it this morning, and based off of my conversation with Mr. Jones, as well as my understanding of the LAFCo process, it seems very, very odd, but it's intended to basically make a statement that the district doesn't do the actual required legal notification, LAFCo does. And so it does seem strange. It's not something that we would normally see, that we do not notice people, but it's due to the fact that LAFCo does the notice.
And we don't have a whereas that LAFCO noticed the,
They haven't done the noticing
Upon
yet.
the final annexation, LAFCO does do the full notification to all interested parties, and so that's where that would come from. It is a strange sentence, and
yeah,
it's been in our resolutions for these annexations for a long time.
yeah.
It just got picked up here, and we've checked in with
Sure.
SR Jones and LAFCO, and it's appropriate. Whether it actually always needs to be in the future, just for confusion purposes, we'll see.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, well, funny the things you pick up on different times you read them, but
Yeah.
good, okay, that sounds good. And then item 6 on the Loma Rica water line extension. This one just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and it doesn't seem, and maybe it meets the letter of the regulations, but it really doesn't mean the spirit of bringing in neighborhoods. And now out of, we had said 29 before with 23 people interested for 29 parcels. Now it's 10 people and only 7 people actually signing up to become customers. It just, I just don't know if this meets the intent of what this program was supposed to be, and I wanted to put it to our board members. I think we should have a broader discussion as it's a lot of money that we're tying up, a lot of district money for a very small number of people at this time. And the purpose of the water line extensions was to bring neighborhoods in, not just 7 houses and for $700,000. And so I wanted to just get the pulse of the board, if you think that this is appropriate at this time, or we should, you know, I don't understand why it keeps shrinking, and the project keeps getting smaller, but it's still a dead-end project. You know, I would like to see it go through all through the neighborhood and loop and be a complete neighborhood project. But I'm not familiar with the area. This is in your division.
Yes.
There's a couple things, right? The intent of bringing it to the neighborhoods, our rules and regulations specifically say 6 is the minimum size of a project that we can do with a minimum of 3 participating. So
in the regulations?
in the rules and regs, section 10.2, I think it is. Yeah. So the minimum is 6 with 3 participating. Typically, the max goal is about 40. We didn't want to do things bigger than that, because then we start to look at things like CFDs or ADs, right, where you're actually going out and potentially, like we did for Cement Hill or for Rodeo Flat, where we go out and.
Because you're putting in an 8-inch pipe for seven homes. And so it doesn't seem like very efficient use of our resources.
Well, that's the part of the district, you know, the orderly expansion of our system. Yes, we would agree that ultimately this could go to the end of Loma, Rica and connect, but we're not doing it all in one shot with this project.
I
We're gonna make an 8-inch
think we
pipe,
should.
and then the next section is pipe. Well, if that's the will of the board to do that project separately than the district finance, you can. It will cost us more money with 0 potential return, at least in the beginning.
No, I'm saying that once more people in that neighborhood are interested in getting water, more than 7 people.
So they're not, right? So we sent out, after the last meeting in December, you requested us to go out and look at the full project again. So Shannon went out and reached out to all of those folks.
Even all the way to the end, the whole
All the way to the end.
lot, and
All
only
the way to
7
the
people
end.
in that whole neighborhood said, yeah, sign me up for water.
10.
Well, 3 of them are just aren't asking for a meter, they're not
Right,
asking.
but 10 of them wanted to participate in the project. And so all 10 of those are paying their portion of that pipeline construction cost, which is the cost that the district is out of pocket of. Right, we're not out of pocket of the capacity and the connection fees because they haven't happened yet. But we are out of pocket for the construction of the pipeline.
Right,
And
so
so
last time there was 23, so it's even less than 50% of the previous amount.
It is, and as Shannon
approved.
mentioned in December, right, this is evolving. Everybody could say they're interested. Now I'm telling you, you need to sign on the dotted line and give us money.
Put your money down.
That starts to change things down, and so when we get the actual commitments, that's where that final project gets built to. And that's why you see it as it is today.
I think just to add a little context to what Mr. Roderick is stating, that per section 10.20.01, it does say an eligible DFWLE must contain a minimum of 6 parcels, of which 5 must be approved, and a target maximum of 40. So in this particular situation, and then it does go on to state that maximum participation level or minimum participation level shall be 50% of the total parcels that could potentially be served by the new water line. And I think what's before the board this morning is a question, there's kind of 2 separate conversations. One, you have an item before you which is specific to an action related to the Loma Rica waterline extension project. And then we have kind of the second issue, which is a larger policy discussion that needs to occur outside of this item. I have heard from several board members that there are some concerns related to this program in general. And in fact, the board didn't fund it in this current year's budget. So this project was from the 2020 budget. And we have been communicating with the residents, and this has kind of been moving along at a steady pace, although we're not getting as much participation as we would all hope to. And we all do have some concerns related to the level of participation. It is in compliance with policy. And so I think for this morning, I think the question before the board is whether or not the board desires to take action on the item before the board. Secondly, I think the second question is would the board like staff to bring this overall program policy back to the board for further discussion about the actual components of the policy? So I think that's kind of the 2 separate conversations we need to have.
That's helpful.
That is helpful. And you mentioned in that regulation, it says 50% of the read that part, 50% of the eligible neighborhood potential.
And that is in reference to the statement that says the minimum participation level will be at least 50% of the total parcels that the district determines could potentially be connected.
Right.
But then the sentence before it states that an eligible project must contain a minimum of 6 parcels, of which 5 must be improved. And so that triggers you to think that the 5 must be able to actually connect and with a meter, which we do meet the level of the 5 that will be connecting with a meter. The 3, because we have 7 connecting fully, so they're paying both the connection fee that pays for the construction of the line, they're also paying for their capacity charge, which pays for the water they'll be able to take or pay for. And then the 3 that are just paying for the construction portion, they will then be paying a standby fee because they're not fully connecting with a meter at this time, and then in the future, they would be connecting and paying the remainder of their fee, which would be the capacity fee. So the costs borne by the district at this point are related to the construction of the project, and that also speaks to why you see that the project does get decreased in size, because the costs associated with the project are essentially construction costs are associated with the length of the line. So as the project size got reduced due to lack of participation, essentially meant that we pulled the main line back and reduced it in length to just in front of those homes that are actually participating.
Yeah, but the direction of the board in December of 2019 was that there were 23 landowners interested. That was the potential we were starting with. Those were the potential numbers.
Correct.
And 7 doesn't meet that threshold of 50, or 10 does not meet that threshold of 50% of the direction that the board gave in December, saying, okay, we got 23 potential people. These are the potential people. We changed the project to change the potential people, so now we could do the project. Do you see what it's kind of a nuance.
Yeah, the district doesn't necessarily have any ability to require people to participate, and I think what it speaks to is the cost of connecting. You know, as I think somebody else stated, that it's one thing to say you're interested and you intend on participating versus now we're really talking about dollars and cents and will I actually be participating? And so from my understanding and speaking with Seth, this is quite common with this particular program, that our level of participation hasn't been really, really high. I believe it was 76 participants at this point. I think that is what the controller was talking about yesterday. And that speaks to that it is a fairly high cost, and they're financing a large cost through the district. So I think that this is something that's very relevant to that kind of second tier discussion we need to have about the overall quality of even having this program.
And so, Doug, I have a question for you. So we put in a lot of these water line extensions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there's the potential, and there's the people that actually sign up. How many on these previous ones have we put in these water lines? How many people that didn't sign up have subsequently come back and paid their connection fees and signed up?
It is not many, it is 1 or 2. I don't have a specific.
1 or 2 out of 100.
We have to go back and check.
It's my understanding that the district currently has approximately 76 to 78 individual loan agreements with parcel owners that participated in this program, and that there really has only been 1 or 2 that have come and requested participation after the fact, which speaks to, I think, what is the fundamental question that needs to be answered by the board, is the fact that only 7 of the 10 of participants are connecting, to me, isn't overly problematic, because the 3 that are not connecting are paying their fair share of the construction project. They're just not paying for capacity. What I think is more problematic to the district from a financial perspective is that the program in itself, the current policy only requires 50% participation. And so what that means that if this project, in this particular case, the project total is $700,000, we only have a potential of paying for $350,000, and the district will be essentially absorbing the remainder half of that cost, $350,000, until such time somebody decides to participate, which isn't likely.
Just answered my question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That clarified, thank you for clarifying that part, because I was under the assumption that I was assuming that once we had the 6 or the 5, that they paid for the installation. They don't.
Just be so that.
They only pay their fair share portion of it.
Right.
So the district will be responsible to pay for the 50% that's not covered through participation, With the addition of the costs associated with installation of the fire hydrants, as well as the soft costs associated with engineering and administrative costs.
That we pay.
Correct, and in this particular situation, I can believe it was in the $35,000 range.
Yeah.
And this also goes like to our pipeline reimbursement policy, which we also have in place, right? Which is any pipeline that's been constructed by the district back until the beginning of time. If somebody wants to connect to that, they're gonna have to pay their fair share of that piece of the pie.
Right.
Even if it was constructed 50 years ago, right? We're just gonna look at the cost and then use CPI to come up with a new number, but that's similar to these, right? All these parcels that aren't connecting all have the tag in front of them that says, if you wanna connect, you're gonna pay 30-some thousand or 40-some thousand, whatever that number is, plus whatever the CPI increase is over time, so.
Director Johansson.
Yeah. And those who have decided not to participate, what are the reasons? Well water, or they haven't built out yet?
Part is they don't wanna pay the cost.
Generally, it's cost.
30-some thousand plus the cost to actual connect, right?
But what's the source of their water?
Well,
So, given the current progression of more drought and drier, and the wells going dry, then potentially they will come into the district.
I think
They
that
want.
was part of the discussion back when this program was developed, right? Is the idea being is that they may not connect right away, but over time, you may get to a point where more and more people are connecting if their wells are struggling or not. I can't say that it will in this particular location. I can't say that it will in any of the ones that we've done today.
Director Peters.
Of these 7 that want to connect, are they trucking in water, or are they having to buy potable water, like 5-gallon buckets?
I believe they all have wells.
They all have wells, they're larger parcels.
I don't know what the status of each well is. Obviously, they came to us wanting a water line extension put in, so they were struggling. Maybe Shannon has more, you know. So they came to us asking to have this done and wanting to pay for it.
Director Hull.
So I appreciate, Jennifer, your kind of separating the issue between this project and the bigger issue. And I really appreciate staff, you know, with a changing philosophy of the board, you're always having to adjust, and it can't be easy because you invest you embrace the philosophy of the board at the time, and then it would seem that sometimes that shifts. This is a program area that I have questioned about from the beginning when I heard about it, that the district is basically serving as a financier for these kinds of projects. And it would become very clear in this, as this project has evolved, that while I think the intent is wonderful, our community isn't embracing it because of the cost, and so we have adjusted this project to downsize until it fit the criteria of the policy. And that, to me, I mean, I don't think there's anything ethically wrong with that, but I question that that's the intent of, that's where we should be as a district. I do question about the 3 who, even though the interpretation of policy, I question the 3, they're not becoming customers. And I'm like, oh, you're either a customer or you're not a customer. You might be funding the pipeline, but if you take that to the extreme, we could have these 10 people saying, we want to construct that pipeline, but none of us want to connect to the district. Would we build the pipeline in that instance? And I think definitely not. And so I have a hard time counting the 3 with the same level of import as I do the 7 who are going full freight with us. I have a lot of empathy for the people who have worked on this with Shannon and others to bring it to the point it is today, and that matters to me because I think it, you know, I kind of struggle with, well, these people have put good faith effort. We as a staff have worked within the confines of board guidance to where we are today, and according to Jennifer, the interpretation is that this group of 10 is appropriate to move forward with the project based on policy. But I am severely challenged by the financial impact of these kinds of projects when in fact the communities being served don't embrace the need. And that is evidenced by 76 customers out of how many millions of dollars the district has funded for this, most of which is not going to be reimbursed. At least half of it is not going to be reimbursed. And we lowered the threshold from 60% to 50% to try to make it more attractive. And so I think we're in a noble place of trying to support our mission and vision for the district, but I don't think the community's ready for it. And when we have wells running dry on a larger scale, if and when that were to occur, then I think we start really ramping this program up to support our community. But I will be hard pressed to support another one of these projects going forth, given that in this particular instance, as a single example, we will be absorbing probably in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $400,000 in the district to fund this water line extension for 7 new customers. And that, to me, I've got a whole lot of constituents out there that are saying, really?
Yeah, doesn't pass. We were presented with 20 parcels, 23 landowners saying that they're going to serve 29 parcels, and now we're saying we're going to actually serve 7 parcels. Right? Even though it, maybe because we shrunk the project and changed the parameters, now it meets the guidelines. But when this was brought to us in December, that we said, yeah, this is a reasonable potential to move forward, I was basing it on serving 29 parcels.
And that's going to be typical with this program, as when the program originally comes before the board for initial approval and inclusion into the capital program, it is very, very likely that the number of participating parcels is going to be significantly modified by the time there's an actual physical project. And that's the nature of the cost of participating in this program. Yeah. And I do think it speaks to what Director Hall was commenting on, is the overall how the financing of this particular program works. I would definitely, what I'm hearing from the board is we certainly need to bring this entire policy back. And then for this morning, we do have this particular project item before the board, if the board so desires to take action on it.
And we do, I just want to say one more thing. We have been working with this project. We've been identifying that in the project updates. So if you look in February and March, we identified that the project had been reduced to only having 10 folks that were committing at that point. And again, the way the program's set up, when we come to you requesting this project be approved, nobody signed on the dotted line. So until that happens, we don't ultimately know what that project looks like. So.
And the project first came in 2017, and it was a much larger project. And I first started hearing about it in 2019 on the engineering committee, and it was being reduced to a 29 parcel project instead of much more. I can't remember the number. And so I think it meets the letter of the law or policy. I just don't feel it meets the spirit of it.
Director Johansson. You had your hand up.
No,
Director Heck, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I agree. I think that, and appreciate, Jennifer, you separating the issues, because I think the whole DFWLE program, could use another look. Okay, and I followed this real closely as I was thinking about running for the board, and came in to the board meetings during the whole time this was being thought about. And so there's a whole history and a philosophy behind this that precedes all of us, by a number of years. And so while I agree, with Directors Hull and Peters positions about, spending this much money for 8 people or 7 people. It just seems out of, it just doesn't seem like an efficient use of funds. I also know that this project was started back about, 5 years ago, 17? And I sort of feel like we need to follow through on our commitment to these folks. They in good faith, and I know Ms. Taylor, Louise Taylor is present with us, and there were others that I've talked to over the last year or two, and they have really worked very hard, and I feel like we need to keep to our word in terms of this specific project, and then maybe take it, like you suggested, another look at this whole policy going forward and how we're doing it and the philosophy behind it. And it was really to extend water lines out to be able to bring as many people into the district in a more affordable way. I'll just leave that there. But yeah, I support this for those reasons. I think that, we made early on commitments, people in reliance on those commitments spent enormous time, money, and energy to make it happen, and I feel like we have a responsibility to move this forward.
So Ricky, what commitments do you feel the district made?
Well, we as a board, and back in the engineering committee, the APC, and prior even to that, in 2017, the commitment we made was, yes, this looks like a good project, let's go forward and see. So there was a reasonable expectation on the part of the landowners that this would eventually arrive to where it is. The numbers of people participating at the end of the day, as Doug and Shannon will tell you, we don't really, we don't have really control over that. They have to meet certain, basic litmus tests in order to, finalize the project. But in the beginning, we definitely made commitments of, huge amount of staff time and, and engineering, I would imagine, in working out the drawing. There was just a lot of time and energy that I know our staff spent. I also know the residents spent. So that's what I feel like. Maybe we didn't have a written commitment. We had board action on this, approving it all the way along.
Right.
And that's the commitment I feel like we made to this neighborhood. And I feel like you guys, I'm really disappointed that we're not getting more participation. And I was excited when we thought we had 28, back.
It was cut in half from what it was before.
Yeah, I know. And so I was really excited about that. And Laura, you had come up with some great ideas about that. And, and it just keeps changing. And, we got different economic times today than we did, a couple of years ago, for sure, and some of that is out of our control. But I feel like we made this commitment back in 2017, and I think it's important. I mean, I'm in favor of going forward because I think we need to follow through on those commitments and the time and energy we spent. And I also believe up there, the wells are very deep. This is, I think, Director Beerwing and I go back and forth about, who represents this area, but I live.
It's on the line.
It's on the line, and I live right there. I know many of the folks that live in this area, and I know that the wells are very deep. They're very, very expensive. Some of them are 500 feet and greater, and they're not a sure thing. We'll just say that. And so I think having those water lines up there since we began this program, with the intent of following it through, is going to eventually bring these folks back into the district. I really think that's going to be happening. Not in 100 years, no. I don't think that's fair, Laura.
Director Johansson.
Thank you, Chris. So, yes, we need to revisit this whole program, but everybody has followed the letter of the law on this particular project. We're here today, and I fully support what Ricky has just said about the whole project, and we need to separate this project from the overall program. So, yeah, I'm fully in supporting it, and I wouldn't take such a cavalier attitude about wells going dry, because they are going dry everywhere. And we got to recognize that these people will be coming and looking to us for help. And so we need to be responsive. we also need to be financially responsive to as a
Mhm.
district.
Right.
So it's gonna be a fine line we're gonna have to walk, but, in this project, I support it.
Chair, I need to revisit my prior advice.
Okay.
I think we need to take this item separately.
I was already gonna do that.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't anticipate this level of discussion.
Yes. Okay,
I just would make the observation that the district engaging in a conversation about a district water line extension, in my opinion, does not create a commitment, because it's an exploration on both sides, right? It's an exploration on the district about the, feasibility of it, and it's an exploration on the part of a community on their interest in financially supporting that project. So when in 2017, we engaged in a conversation with the community, at that point, we are making a commitment to engaging in a conversation, not to an outcome. And if every district water line extension where a community makes a request and we engage in an analysis results in a perceived commitment, I think that's a real, for me, that does not result in a commitment. The commitment comes at this point, where we are asking the board to vote on whether to proceed or not. So I just make that distinction, which to me is important. And I realize that on the part of Louise and others in that community who worked to bring this project to this point, that it might seem differently, but I mean, how can we as a district engage in the conversation if the minute a request comes in, it's a commitment?
May I respond?
Sure.
Thanks, Karen. And I think my response to that is, I hear what you're saying, but yet this one is a little bit different in that we took this project through engineering committee and through APC, and so there was a reasonable expectation, I believe, on the part of the homeowners that this was in fact moving forward, and those committees approved it, and then it came to the board and we approved it conceptually, and the numbers were greater, but we had gone through this process. So, I agree, if we engage in conversation, that doesn't mean a commitment. I agree with that. But in this case, I think this is just very different, that we did, in fact, reasonably make commitments to these folks by our actions and by the years worth of continuing to work on it and refine it and so on. So I really hear you, but I also see this is different. And again, I think your concerns are important, and we need to address them when we talk about the bigger policy.
Absolutely. Any further board discussion? So I agree with Ricky and because of the historic nature of this program, first off, going forward with the policy and the amount of time we have put into it and the expectation, I think we'd be disingenuous today to vote no on this one. But looking at the policy certainly is warranted. I'm as concerned about the dollars all the time.
Me too.
So, Louise Taylor, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Oh, she's muted herself.
She's muted herself. There she goes. Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Louise.
I think there are a couple of things that you should be aware of. First of all, our association is 47 years old. We have many people we have quite a few people who are the original owners, who have been here for a long, long time, and obviously they're elderly now. We have a number of people living on Social Security. And so I think a lot of those people that talked to me about it really felt that they couldn't afford it. Now, we had the death of 2 of our neighbors just recently, and I found out that a house that has been vacant next door to me for 14 years since the woman died has just been sold. So I see a potential for people to want to hook up as new people move in. And I would rather imagine next door to me, they're going to build a rather lovely house and would certainly want to have NID water. Also, as you go higher up the hill, the wells have less and less water. 3 gallons per minute. So they have storage tanks. And I just think that the age of the community, the age of the residents, their income, their expressions of being unable to afford it, wish they could, should be known to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Anybody else like to comment on this item? Loma Rica Drive, DFWLE, District Finance Water Line Extension. Anybody else? Start on your phone. Brent, you're on. Can you give your last name for the record, please?
Kogel, Koegel. Yeah, again, I'd like to thank Shannon and your whole group of people. We've been working, Louise and Taylor and I have been working on this for many years. And the size of the project has changed a number of times. I think what's important is that the bigger the project is, the more that it does cost. Costs have risen over the last 4 years, as you know. So the cost on a per resident basis has gone up. And as we've scaled the project back, it's not quite proportional, but as you cut the project back by 20%, the costs roughly go down by about the same amount. It's just more expensive to put water line in these days than it used to be. In terms of the wells, I know some wells are as low as a gallon or a gallon and a half a minute. So a number of us are very concerned about that. There's also some building that might take place, renovation work, and I think there's going to be some additional interest as things change, like Louise has just mentioned. In the future, I'm hoping that more people would hook up.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to comment, starting on your phone? Anybody in the audience like to comment? Last chance, starting on your phone if you'd like to comment. Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion for item number 6 to approve funding agreement for the DFWLE and Loma Rica Drive.
Okay, Mr. President, I'd like to make the motion to approve the Loma Rica Drive DFWLE as it has been presented today with the number of participants as we've been discussing, to approve the funding agreements, the 10 funding agreements, and authorize the general manager to document.
I second it.
Any further discussion from the board? Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 3,
I'm going to vote yes with the caveat that we bring the topic to, and with because of the work, because the interpretation is that this project meets policy.
Mm-hmm.
aye.
That's an aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
And I'm going to vote no, because this is, every time we've heard this, it's decreased. And so while it meets the letter of the policy, I really don't believe it meets the spirit.
Division 2,
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you for input. Thank you, staff. Next item will be number 7. Director Heck has some questions about the warrants.
I do. Mr. President, were you going to take items 4 and 5 first?
I was going to combine them.
Oh, you're going to combine them?
Unless
Okay.
there's,
All right, that's fine.
not to.
So for the board members, I had asked this via email to Jennifer, but I was late in getting her my email. So anyway, I'm going to ask the questions now. And she said she did have answers, so that was pretty amazing. The first thing I wanted to ask is on the pages 17 and 18 with regard to the customer refunds. the number on here is huge, it's $68,000. And so my question goes to, why do we have so many customer refunds? It's such a huge, such a huge dollar amount.
First of all, I'd like to thank staff for helping me out at the very last minute and getting those.
Sorry.
No, it was great. They were on it. It was awesome. And it does seem very strange. We did not actually give out $68,000 in customer refunds. The large proponent or preponderance of the refund was associated with instead of when there's a construction project, that most construction projects are required to pull a performance bond to ensure their work. There's also an option that you could pay cash in lieu of pulling a bond, and you will see some contractors do that. So that was, in this particular case, $61,000 of the $68,000 was actually refunding of basically a performance bond payment.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But still, there was a lot of customer refunds, which I still did not understand. Why is there such a large volume of them?
Sometimes customer refunds occur when an account changes hands, mid-month. That can be something when property is sold mid-month and they've already paid the 60 for the entire month. I'd also have to defer to Chip. There's also other reasons related to water leaks in our rules and regulations. We are able to issue some refunds for water leaks or for overpayment. So it would be very nuanced as to the reason behind each specific one, but we can look into it if you would like.
Okay, well, that answered my question, thank you. And then I did have a second question. On page 67 of our warrants, there is a HRA distribution of $79,000, heavy duty change. So I was wondering, wow, that's a big HRA distribution. Was that for a single person, a retiree, one retiree? What?
No, it was not related to one person's. So the HRA is the health care reimbursement account, and it's a program that we provide for employees where they can kind of make money to then be reimbursed for eligible medical expenses, which could be dental or medical. It also is utilized for the district to fund the cost for retiree healthcare costs. So this is those post-retiree healthcare benefits that the district provides to employees. And so that large payment was related to payments to CalPERS for those healthcare retiree costs.
Oh, so it wasn't one person saved up HRA amount. That was what I was trying to
and then had a major eye surgery done or something. No.
Yeah. But wow, that's okay. That's
major.
Major, yeah.
That's a good explanation. Thank you for those, and thank you, Marvin. I'm sure you and your staff were rambling.
Great job.
Thank you so much. That ends my questions on the warrant.
Okay, Director
I don't know if
Peters.
anybody has any.
On that wage work, on that HRA, it shows that their operating expenses, which I would expect them to be overhead operating expenses, but several of them are charged to a facility, Upper Division, Dutch Black Combi, Ballot. Why would a facility receive I guess their fee is to the facilities? How does that tie in?
Yeah, definitely.
Come on up. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning. How is everybody? So the piece that you're looking at there are admin fees to administrate the program. So for our FERC license for the hydro facilities, all of the expenses for hydro facilities are separated out by the facilities, and we have a formula that we use. So those specific pieces for wage work are the admin fees. The HRA expense itself is not separated out into the facility expenditures of the admin fees that we're separating out.
Oh, okay.
So,
thank you.
So yeah, so they'll be in their HRA many, many times because you're seeing Fund 10, Fund 30, Fund 50. Fund 50 has all of these facilities there.
Oh, see, we don't see the 10, 30, 50 part.
Right, on the check register, you don't see the breakout by fund. That's why you might see, like, one of our examples is our lease expense. You see the same dollar amount. It's because it's one division, it's one fund, and another fund is one payment, but it's split between funds. The check register is not showing by fund, it's just showing the overall expense entity-wide. So that's why there's so many line items, is we're splitting those out by fund.
And we wouldn't do it by treatment plant or by other facilities, only the FERC facilities.
Just the FERC facilities, because we're mandated to keep those costs there. So, where an expense is directly related to a facility, we put it to a facility. If it's an overhead type of expense, which the HRAs are, we do not draw those out down to a facility. We do that in our cost accounting for other types of projects, but as a regular practice for writing the check, we don't do that because it's an overhead expense. That's why it just says operating expense, because it's just an overhead and administrative part of our well. Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
All right. Any more questions? Is there any public comment on these three items in the consent agenda? Star 9 your phone. Public comment from the audience. Okay. So I entertain a motion to approve items 4, 5, and 7 of the consent agenda combined.
I'll move that we approve items 4, 5, and 7 of the agenda.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. General order number 8. Urban Water Management Plan update. Doug, you're on. Morning, Doug.
Good morning.
Morning again.
Yes. Okay, good morning, board, staff, members of the public. We're here to conduct a public hearing with regards to the Urban Water Management Plan, 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. After hearing testimony, we consider adopting Resolution 2021-24, which is adopting the document, filing it, and then implementing it, the update. So just a quick rundown. The district has to do these every 5 years as part of the requirements for anybody that has at least 3,000 customers or more than 3,000 acre-feet of water. We sent out notification of the prep of this document back in December to the agencies involved, as well as other stakeholders that's listed in the appendix there. We had several public outreach meetings. As you're aware, we had the draft release that was done on June 8th, then we revised and sent out a revised version on June 14th. Then we had the 2 public workshops with the board. Those occurred on June 23rd and June 24th. And then, what we talked about and had the public an opportunity to discuss the urban water management plan and information in there. We did send out public hearing notices pursuant to Government Code 6066, which means we did them for consecutive weeks, 2 weeks prior to this hearing. We did it both in the League of Ministers as well as the union and all the journals, so all the papers within the district. We did receive, as we talked about before, written comments received up to July 2nd would be included in the packet. Those are included in the packet. Also some responses to those comments, because you requested last time in the Ag Water Management Plan that we formally respond to comments. So we've done that, and that is part of the document. I did receive one additional one this morning, so it is not in the packet. And it's partially a response to some of our responses, but we do have that. We can talk about that afterwards if you'd like to, as part of this process. So with that, I think we'll hand off to Jim. We did make some additional changes since the last workshops, and we can discuss those in more detail once Jim gets through with his presentation. I believe on the website and then electronically, you had both the clean version as well as the messy red line version, and I did it was messy because it had some multiple changes in it, but,
Well, it's good to see the changes.
Yes.
so, anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you very much, Doug. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Jim,
thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. Members of the board, members of the public, my name is Jim Crowley with Sanjero, and we've been working on the ag and the urban water management plan this past few months. Today we're going to offer a condensed presentation of the urban water management plan for the public hearing. We're going to talk about the overview of the urban water management plan, focusing mostly on demand and supply projections. Then a little bit about the urban water management process that Doug has mostly gone through already, including the requested revisions from the board, from the previous workshops, and the public comments and responses. So the approach to the urban water management plan is that it covers the next 20 years per the requirements. However, NID is facing longer term issues than that, as we heard on a couple of the consent agenda items. But our supplies are going to be impacted likely by climate change throughout the state of California. Regulations and the management of water are changing. In our service area, we have changing demographics and water needs, and also a potential change to community identity as new people come into the community. And really the urban water management plan, because it's a near-term planning element, doesn't provide the opportunity in the requirements and the submittal tables to address these longer term issues. So we've talked before about the plan for water, which is the vehicle in the process for long-term planning for NID that allows all of the issues of the community and the resources to be developed at a pace that allows for full consideration and discussion. That plan for water was started in 2018, but put on hold. It's expected to resume again at the end of the year here. So this urban water management plan is developed to meet the regulatory requirements. It builds on past planning efforts, and because it's an urban water management plan, the requirements of the plan focus mostly on the treated water system, though because NID is so unique, we include both our treated and raw water elements to provide the full picture. So in general, the urban water management plan is codified in the California Water Code, and then the DWR has provided optional guidelines and mandatory submittal tables for us to complete when we submit this. The urban water management plan in general is organized around these main sections, which includes a system description, water demands and water demand projections, compliance with the gallon per capita day statute, then a description of water supplies and that supply reliability in the future due to different drought scenarios. And then this cycle around the water shortage contingency plan, the requirements for that are an enhanced prescriptive elements that need to be included in that plan. And then the urban water management plan also presents the demand management and conservation programs of the district. So as I talked earlier, we're mostly going to focus this presentation on the demand projections and the supply projections. The demand projections are based on the projected number of connections and the unit demand per connections. This graph right here illustrates the 8 different types of customers that we have: single family, multifamily, landscape, institutional, and so on. As is evidenced by the graph from 2014 through 2020, the growth in the non-residential accounts is relatively flat. our single family account numbers. The dotted line is our most significant in terms of numbers of new accounts. And that's indicative of the type of customers that we have, which is a mostly residential area. And then on the raw water side, the green line on top there is the number of raw water customers that put an order in for water per year. We have more connections than is shown here, but these are the customers that are actually ordering water. And from 2014 to 2017, there was a rather big spike in customers ordering water, and then it decreased and then came back up a bit in 2020. We also have fall winter customers and raw water annual customers that order water, but they are a subset of the total raw water customers. And as you can see in 2020, our number of fall winter customers spiked. 2020 was a dry year, so it looked like our customers, or some of our customers, were adding irrigation in the fall. Okay, so we take these number of customers and apply the current unit demands to come up with the demand projections for the treated retail side of our customer base. As shown here, the total customer demands treated retail demands really aren't projected to increase significantly based on the most recent growth rates. Still, you know, just around 10,000 acre feet up to 2045. Our total demand projections include the retail treated, the wholesale treated. We sell treated water to a few entities in the area, Grass Valley, Nevada City, and some others. And then we have our water loss component. And then our raw water projected demands. We have defined this as a duty, as we have talked about in the public workshops. We still need to spend some effort to better understand our raw water customer uses. So for this urban water management plan, we developed a proxy estimate called raw water duty. And that is also not shown to increase very much between 2020 and 2040. Then we also have our raw water wholesale customers, our largest being the city of Lincoln, but we do provide raw water in wholesale volumes to others as well. And then our last line item on our demand projections are the unrecoverable in-stream flows. These are in-stream flows that are required per our water rights and our FERC license. They are shown in a range because we're showing the new proposed in-stream flows under the proposed FERC license, which in the past it was a single number. In the proposed license, they're requiring these in-stream flows on a range of requirements based on the hydrologic year type. So adding all of these elements together, our total water demands going out to 2040. Now these are projected in a range of about 175,000 to about 218,000 acre feet, depending on the year type. So those are the demand projections. Now we talk about the supply side of the water resources strategy. So NID supplies are from the watershed runoff and storage. When totaling all of the rights for runoff and storage, it's approximately 450,000 acre feet. The actual available, though, is less due to the temporal difference between the water rights, the demand patterns, and storage strategies. We also have the ability to purchase up to 54,361 acre feet from PG&E. The actual amount available is also less due to not only temporal and hydrologic impacts, but also on NID's available budget to purchase the water and how the need for that supply integrates in with the existing storage strategy at the time. And then we also take advantage of the recycled water that is discharged from 3 of the wastewater treatment plants in the area that gets commingled in the streams and then diverted into our canals during irrigation season. So the purpose of the urban water management plan is to compare projected supplies to projected demands to determine any shortfalls. So the projected supply is based on the average year that's been available to NID throughout the historic data. It's about 386,000 acre feet is available during an average year. When compared to the projected demands, you can see that there is ample supply to meet the projected demands under a normal year condition. Now, the urban water management plan statutes require supplies to be projected out during various drought scenarios. In this cycle, the drought scenarios have been increased up to 3 types. We need to look at a single dry year. We need to look at a 5-year drought. And then we also need to analyze what's now called a drought reliability assessment, which is using that 5-year drought and applying it to the next 5 years to see what condition we're in. For these drought projection requirements, we increase demand 10% to account for the higher irrigation needs that we see during dry times. For instance, in 2020, our demand was significantly higher than the previous average years. And then this unconstrained demand projection is also part of the requirements. So we're following the requirements on that. Our 5-year drought that we're using is the 87 to 91 drought. And then when we're projecting supplies, we are not including the recycled water as we have no rights or contracts to that water. So when we project the supply out and compare it to the projected demands, during our single dry year, we had 91,800 acre feet. And when you compare that to demands, it shows a significant shortfall in between supply and demand. So that's for the projected single dry year. When we look at the projected 5-year drought, looking at these 5 year increments. The first 1 or 2 years of each of the projections show that shortfall. And then going out to year 3 and 4 and 5, the shortfall turns into actual excess supply. And the reason for that is a couple reasons. One is that because our supply is snowmelt based, it's severely impacted by the short extreme events. But as a drought becomes longer, NID is able to change the strategies, adjust the strategies, decrease demands, increase carryover storage, and then so as the drought gets longer in the design drought that we selected, the impact of the drought is reduced by changing these operational strategies. The urban water management plan is pretty prescriptive on the drought scenarios that you look at. So I'm recommending that in the plan for water, more drought scenarios should be investigated, as well as a significant effort looking at mitigation effectiveness of mitigating drought impacts through supply management optimization, demand management strategies compared to solely infrastructure alternatives. And definitely, as we've seen from some of the comments and things that have been discussed in the workshops, the plan for water should consider a range of droughts as we go forward. So based on those shortfalls that are projected, there's a water shortage contingency plan that is put in place to address and mitigate when we have a shortfall. So the water shortage contingency plan requirements were increased during the cycle to include these 7 main components. One is a annual assessment procedure. So now NID will be submitting annually to DWR what's called an annual assessment, where NID will project demands and supply availability for the next 12 months to determine if there's any projected shortfalls. And then we also have the water shortage stages and responses, and that's for each range of shortfall, what are the responses that the customers and the district will enact to address the shortfall. We have a description of the communications plan, how those shortage stages and responses will be communicated to the customers and the other stakeholders. An element on compliance and enforcement for the specific responses that are called for in the respective stage. Financial impacts. If demands are reduced, what is the potential reduction in revenue from volumetric sales? And then a monitoring, reporting, and refinement to illustrate how the water shortage contingency plan will be implemented, how it'll be refined and updated based on lessons learned, and then an impact of seismic risk based on the local hazard mitigation plan. So that's our water shortage contingency plan. And that's the shortened overview of the urban water management plan. In the previous workshops, we went into more detail, and we'd be happy to do that now. But for now, I'll turn it back to Doug.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Sorry. Well, Board President, I think the idea here is that we can receive comments from the board, and then we would request that up the public hearing and provide testimony.
Yes, sir. Questions or comments from the board? Since we've had some changes.
I have some, but I see, both Laura, it looks like, and Director Hall have some, and
Who wants to go first? Director Hall, go
Okay,
first.
I just have a simple question, I think. On page 12 of the slide deck, we have projected supply of the 91,807 acre feet. And I was under the impression that our kind of minimum storage target, based on Chip's presentation at other meetings, is that we're targeting over 100,000 acre feet. So I'm wondering, what's the assumption behind that projected supply? I mean, is it zero precipitation, zero increase in storage?
yeah, that's
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's good to have that.
Jim, did you?
Jim, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. So the projected supply is the actual historical supply that was available during that single dry year, which was 1977. So during that dry year, we were definitely below our targets that you were referring to, Chip had discussed.
And then Jim, is the projected demand, is that based on, looks like it's based on average demand, not what happened in 77, but what happens normally, is that correct?
Correct. That projected demand is what we're saying 2025, 2030, 2035 is projected to be, plus that 10% adder.
And it includes the, well, go ahead, Anna. And it includes the flow requirements at the lowest level? So an extremely dry year?
We did adjust these projected demands. We went back and looked at what that hydraulic year was, and it was either the most extreme or the second. It was either critically dry or extremely dry. It was the extremely dry FERC requirement year, which was 16,359 acre feet,
Okay.
which is.
That's on page 49 of the plan.
Thank you.
Can I ask, speaking to that projected demand, so, and is it correct to say that this 91,807 was the actual supply that was available in 1977 in this year type, and that the projected demand, so in 1977 we supplied 91, but we used 177,000, is that demand number based on 19?
That's 2025 numbers.
That's 2025 numbers, as if it was a normal year.
That's a projection, right? So that 2025 is a projected number, it's not a.
But it's projected as if it was a normal year.
Yes.
Not a dry year.
The supply is dry year, the demand is normal year.
Correct, because typically as you go into a multiple year drought, you start to develop all your contingency plans, and that starts to reduce your demand, whereas this one dry year, it's gonna catch us off guard a little bit.
Not like
that. You would still,
Unlike
not
today.
unlike today.
Yeah.
you would still ultimately have the ability to start to reduce your reductions through your drought contingency plan. But the idea was that we kept it there to show what typically your demand would be in that one dry year scenario, that you would have to then deal with.
Remember, the purpose of this portion of the urban water management plan is to require agencies such as the district to plan what is our actual demand and what's our supply, and then that's when the stages of the drought water shortage contingency plan come into play, so that we can implement stage by stage to reduce our demand to meet what our supply is. It's a planning tool.
I've got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Director Hay.
One of these little haunting things that keeps coming up for me, and it did in the, Ag Water Management Plan and preceding that, the Plan for Water when we had our false start, is that, in our demand numbers, we are using, Department of Finance population projections for Nevada and Placer County, as opposed to pulling out that portion of Placer County that is just within the NID service territory, NID district boundaries. So that makes me curious and concerned that perhaps the demand projections become overstated because we are using all of Placer County for some of these assumptions.
So
For growth.
the idea
Can
is that-
someone address that?
Yeah, so, and Jim, you can jump in here from
Yes.
sideways, but the idea with these demand numbers, they're based on our previous numbers. So we took what that actual number was, and we projected it forward. For these projections, we did not include the fact that the county population would change different. In other words, we didn't use the county population projection in the demand assumption for these numbers that you're seeing in the urban water management plan. They are based on our previous six or 7 years. We projected what our growth was over those last. We continued that projection forward. So it has nothing to do specifically with making adjustments in the demand number because of the population, but that is another piece to look at in terms of the demand. The population overall are growing, and so some of the infilling and those types of things could impact us, but the actual demand numbers that you see in this document are based on our previous 6 years.
So if they're based on our previous, was our previous also inclusive of all of Placer County population? Because I think it was.
No,
So are we taking back data and moving it forward?
No, these are
Maybe
actual data, our
Maybe-
actual connections.
Maybe I could just provide a little context. So the Department of Finance population numbers are used as an informative tool as for staff to say, okay, does this generally make sense, our demand calculations? The demand calculations are not influenced by the population numbers. The population numbers are used as a check on, okay, our demand numbers are growing, is the population growing or not projected to grow? One of the challenges with the Nevada Irrigation District specifically in using the Department of Finance numbers is that a portion of Placer County is largely unincorporated. In the Department of Finance numbers, they are split out for population-wise
Right.
based off of jurisdictional boundaries. And so it'd be very difficult to separate out the population growth projections for unincorporated Placer County for the portion that only remains within Nevada Irrigation District's boundaries. It's easy if you pull city by city out, but it's that other piece. So for our situation here, it does make much more sense to project future demand numbers based off of our historical demand actuals versus population requirements, because it would be very difficult to come up with a logical methodology utilizing the Department of Finance population numbers. And so it's more provided in this document to provide kind of that check and balance. If it were to show population was not increasing at all, or if it were to show population was going to decrease for some reason and our demand was still going up, that would trigger staff to go back and take a deeper dive on that.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. And one other piece, it is a little confusing in that when we were talking about our TMs and our demands.
Right.
That model actually had population influences in that number.
That's right, it did. I'm remembering correctly that there was something that.
That was as part of that model that was developed for that. We did not use that for this document.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that model based off of land use versus
Correct.
so when you're doing a actual water model based off of land use, there is a population density associated with each particular land use designation.
Yes.
Defined by the county's general plan.
Right.
General plan. The Department of Finance isn't that nuanced down to land use designations based off of parcels. It is more related to, this jurisdictional area of the city of Lincoln is projected to have this population at this point. So it's just a little bit of apples and oranges when comparing the previous model that was done for the technical memorandums versus the population stated as the purpose of it in this particular document. The population in this urban water management plan and the agricultural management plan were not used to formulate the demand numbers. They were more utilized as a trigger to check our assumptions.
But so then that leads me to the question, so, are the Department of Finance numbers something that we should be using going forward, since it's really not relevant to that portion of the district that is contained within Placer County?
For the purpose of the urban water management plan, I do think it is always a good idea from providing information and knowledge perspective to continue to provide that number. That is the number that all agencies refer to on an annual basis to determine what your population is, and as well as it is used for other types of calculations, for example, water budgets and those types of things. They would utilize and rely upon the Department of Finance population number for actual demand calculating and modeling. And especially when we're going to do the real deep dive in the plan for water, it's much more appropriate to use a land use-based modeling. I think that you would get some more specific, accurate population information based off of land use. Specifically, going back to my original comment that with the Department of Finance, it would be almost impossible to try to pull out the population within unincorporated Placer County that's only associated with the Nevada Irrigation District.
So then, going forward for the plan for water, is what you're stating, is that also true, that it'd be very hard to pull out that unincorporated area of Placer County? Or are you saying, just so I have another understanding, that we will pull it out by land use? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. You would pull it out by land use. So for the plan for water, you would essentially go through, and it sounds like the model is already set up this way, is you identify on a parcel by parcel basis the land use designation, and then you would take the associated population densities from the planning documents, which are essentially the general plans, and that's how you would back it in. Where the real work's going to have to be done, and that's through coordination with our sister agencies and also, through conversations with this board, is determining the absorption rate of those populations. And so that's always the big question, right? What is a reasonable absorption rate of new home construction and build out?
Well, and we would have actuals for certain areas of high growth, prior to 2006, and, and we'd have certain places. Okay. It's just that I really want, when we get to some point, that we get our demand numbers more refined, because it feels like our demand is still potentially overstated because we're using this larger Placer County data. So I just want to make sure that for the plan for water, we are able to pull out the unincorporated part of Placer County.
Yeah, and I agree, it is definitely a much more accurate way of doing it.
Yeah,
Just to reiterate, in this particular plan, the demand projections are based off of actual demand, and it's a percentage increase that's not necessarily tied to population. It is what we're seeing increase year over year.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Okay.
Director Johansson.
Yeah. So quick statement, correct me if I'm wrong, and then maybe two questions. Before the drought declaration, our population increase was 1.2% within the district, and we had about 2.2% increase in water demand. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, I would have to refer to Jim for that.
I don't know where you got that. Where'd you get that?
Are you talking an annual?
Yeah, from staff.
Oh, you have,
It sounds about right.
it's not anywhere in here, so.
No, it's not.
But that seems like a relevant number.
Yes, well,
I mean.
the 1 point something percent is the number that's been around.
That's close. Well, that's,
Yeah.
okay.
Where did that come from?
It sounds probably close to me. I could calculate it.
Yeah.
I think he just calculated it, correct?
He's the walking calculator.
Oh. Let's see here.
Okay.
And Jim, unless you know off the top of your head.
When we get into plan for water, we're going to refine those numbers,
Correct.
and that's the place to refine them. My question, drought contingency plan, the 6 stages, so there's some things in here I thought we were going to go over during the urban water management plan, but we haven't. Are we going to be able to revisit that in the future? And definitely looking at some of the enforcement aspects, some of the available supply minimums, the categories. I just think it needs to be reworked with a bigger scope of, so we're gonna look at that again.
So on the July 28th meeting, we are gonna be looking at the enforcement aspect.
Okay.
And then as to answering the second part of your statement, was it related to you wanted to drill down more on supply as it relates to each one of the consumptive use categories?
Well, as our demands, our FERC demands kick in, our supplies have to go up.
Correct.
And, okay, and then last question, treated water, industrial use, I saw it wasn't changed at all. Did you factor in that, I may be mistaken, but cannabis is considered a commercial industrial crop? And was that usage factored into this report?
Yes, it is factored in as far as the current.
I'll bet it's minimus
Right.
right now,
Yeah.
right? But where it will be 5 years from now, it's hard to know. Maybe because you got legal, you got folks that come in and get permits from the water board,
Right.
and then it's, you can count it.
And
Go
how do
ahead.
we track that?
Good morning,
So
Chip.
two different customer bases we're kind of talking about. So on the treated water side, we would classify them as industrial commercial growers. I can tell you we don't have any of those as of yet, but we have had a few come through in the permit process, so more to come on that. On the raw water side of things, they're just an irrigation customer with a crop type that we report. So that's the differentiation between the two, and yes, they are incorporated in the reports now. And then stepping back a moment in regards to the drought contingency plan, as we mentioned during the ag plan and this one as well, we modified our current drought contingency plan to fit the mold of DWR and their requirements. And our goal is to get this pushed through, but we definitely want to pull that back out as soon as we're done with this process, revisit that drought contingency plan, modify it to meet our needs, and maybe revisit some of our categories of our customer bases, things of that nature. So it will be coming back to the board.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chip. Okay, any more questions from the board? Okay, Director Peters.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for putting this together, it's really good. I just have some clarifying questions. On tables 2-4, on page 16, I have a couple questions about this, but my first one is on this other, it says other is, everything else is growing less than 1% except landscape, and then other is growing 6.3% annual growth. So, and looking at the definition of other, it says that other is standby fire services. Is other anything besides just standby fire services? And so then you go to the slide one on table 3-9 on page 27, and other is increasing 114%, I guess, total over the years. And so, but standby fire, do we look at standby fire, do we keep water and do we account for water every day on standby fire as we would a single-family dwelling? How does that, because that's the biggest growth rate, and it seems like it's the smallest number, but with the highest increases.
Yes, great question, and that is a result of the building code and ordinances, that when you build a new home or you significantly remodel your existing home, you're required to put in fire sprinkler system. What the district does, per our current policy, is we have a residential meter for domestic supply, and then we also supply a fire meter to measure, monitor any flow through the fire meter. You're not supposed to be using this for consumptive uses at all, and that's why we put in 2 meters. However, having said that, there are some developers that have been plumbing in a toilet or 2 to these systems, and that's merely to keep them flushed.
Oh,
So we are tracking the usage.
What do you mean keep them flushed?
Flushing the fire system out, so
Oh,
every time.
For the water.
Yeah, it's all separate pipes, you're saying?
It's all separate pipes, totally separate system. It's similar to the sprinklers you see like in a hotel room, right? It's similar to that. But every time they flush the toilet, it keeps those pipes cycled, circulated. Regardless, the point of all this is, yes, that's growing faster, and it's because of the new regulations on building code. And due to the district's current policy, we put in 2 meters. Hopefully that's something we can revisit in the near future and maybe just look at a single meter, but that's the conversation for another day.
And it seems like in the tables, we can just say fire service then rather than other, because you have to go and search the definition of other to figure out. Because it jumps out at you when you skim
Mhm.
the table.
Sure.
It's only one, if it's only one thing.
114%.
Yeah, and so other, so if we just put fire service instead of other, I think that would be helpful. And then, looking at back to table 2.4 on 16, single-family growth, is this all brand new subdivisions, or is, I was under the impression most of it's infill, as it were, within the existing facilities, just people connecting like these district-funded water line extensions, people becoming customers that have always had potential, but just aren't customers yet, is that correct? That are on the existing, they could connect if they wanted?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you look at table 2.4, and the single-family annual growth rate is 0.4%, a majority of that is infill, because again, we're only looking at the last 5-year window. There was not a ton of development in the last 5-year window, because quite frankly, the economics of development didn't pan out. I would expect with elsewhere in this document, you see all the projects that are moving forward, that's probably going to increase a little bit based on the amount of projects that we have talked with the county about. Regardless, to your question, that 0.4% is mostly infill.
Okay, and so that begs the question of, is this really new demand, or was this demand accounted for when we built the treatment plant? Because we have way excess capacity in our treatment plants that we assumed growth in the past that hasn't come yet. And so is it truly new demand, or is it just actually utilizing already planned?
For the purpose of this document, it would be new demand. For the purpose of sizing an actual piece of infrastructure, yes, you would size it for the full build-out in most cases, and specifically in regards to a treatment plant.
Yeah, and the pipelines and everything, so so I would have thought that water would have already been accounted for. You mean, we built the treatment plant and we didn't dedicate the water?
Remember, the demands that are shown are actual demands experienced, and the demand projections are a year-over-year percentage increase based off of actual numbers of water used. A treatment plant design is based off of a design criteria that's related to a full build-out of who would be eventually connected. So it's a little bit apples and oranges as far as this particular document is concerned.
Okay, but we're not setting aside that amount of water already, because it's already assumed we have to set it aside, because
you have to.
Like you're saying double counting.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, are we double counting or are we not double?
We're not double counting.
You have the capacity in your treatment plant for this growth as it continues to move forward. But we're not counting that once and then counting a second time, because this is, like Jennifer said, this is actual demand numbers that we're looking at. Treatment plants are based on the overall picture.
But in the supply, we're
These
not already
numbers,
accounting for.
these growth numbers, right, are going to be dealt with treatment plants until we get to a point where they start to meet their capacities based on existing current demands.
Okay. All right, well, that's good to know.
Can I follow up on that question?
Sure.
Another question. Have you not presented us, in the past, number of parcels that exist in infill? Like there's like 28,000 or some number of infill parcels in the district.
So on that table 2.4, if you run down that first column in 2020, it says standby, 1,639. Those are all parcels that currently front our water lines that are not getting water.
Okay.
Those are infills, potential future.
So they're not water line extensions, they're already in front of pipe, they're standing by, they're paying standby.
That's correct. They could walk in and it
That is my own question.
And so these 17,000, the difference of these 1,500 between, the 17,008 and 19,003, those people would have to pay a connection, would have to tap them into the main line and put a lateral and put a connection and a meter, a connection and a.
Correct. They would pay connection fees and capacity.
And capacity.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Okay, and then then I had a question about, Can you define carriage water? What's
Me too.
Yeah, me too, me three.
Carriage water. I read that too.
Yeah.
See if you want to jump on
It's
it.
on page 22.
Yeah.
Did you want me to?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. So carriage water is the amount of water the district needs to divert into the canals in order to serve a raw water customer. So as we talked about in the ag plan, it's difficult to know when a customer actually takes the water that they've ordered and for how long they take it. And then NID's ditch tenders on an annual or a daily and weekly basis adjust the canal flows based on the orders that they're receiving. So the amount of water that goes into the canals is highly variable and difficult to peg to an actual annual irrigation season delivery from a single customer. So in order to come up with how much water do we need to divert into the canals in the future, we developed this carriage water concept where, based on the number of customers that we have ordering water, this is the amount of water that we've diverted into the canals to meet those total demands. So the carriage water consists of the actual water that the customers take. It includes water that we need to divert in there that we lose through seepage, theft, spillage at the end of the canals, because we only measure the tailwater canal at our bottommost canals, not the ones in between. So it's a concept to consider all the water that we need to make sure that a customer can get the water through their box. And then we turn it into a unit demand based on the number of customers. And then this allows us to project what the raw water total demands would be in the future based on the number of customers.
Well, it does, but that means on page 22, there's a sentence that says raw water system loss, including carriage water, seepage, evaporation, stock water theft, and other unknown uses, which I'm curious what that is. It seems like carriage water is redundant then, because carriage water is seepage, evaporation, stock water theft, and other unknown uses. That is your definition of carriage water. So it's redundant to say carriage water and these other things.
Carriage water includes those other things.
No, it says raw water losses include carriage water, evaporation, transpiration. It says raw water system loss, including carriage water, seepage, evaporation, stock water, theft. And we don't define carriage water, but it sounds like carriage water is everything. You could say raw water system loss, also known as carriage water. You could say that, but to say that carriage water is included on top of evaporation, seepage, it doesn't make sense.
So I think you have to read it in context of the sentence right above it. So to maintain proper flow in canals to ensure adequate delivery, the district supplies the canals with more water than actually ordered. That more water, that additional volume, is referred to in total as the carriage water. So it comes into play when you go back to table 3.9, and if you look at the raw water customer duty, that includes the water purchased plus the carriage water, which is it's a formula calculation where they take the carriage water calculations. And it goes back to the table that we recently sent out that there was a question, and it's a very good question. how much water do we deliver versus what is purchased?
Right.
And so it's a reflection of the delta. I do agree it could be worded a little bit better. I think staff is trying to shoehorn a definition into a term that may be a little bit nuanced in this particular context. But the intent is to explain what the total raw water duty is versus what is purchased. So that's what's important to understand.
Right, well, then I would say carriage water includes this, and not the whole raw water loss, because it doesn't flow right, because you read it, and you say, okay, carriage, and so it acts like it's double counting, carriage water plus seepage plus evaporation plus stock.
So in the context of this particular table, because the table for NID raw water customers isn't also showing a line for water loss, that water loss calculation is included in the total water customer duty, which includes kind of that larger characterization of carriage water.
See, I am confused.
Yeah.
Because when Jim explained what carriage water is, I was writing down, and he said the amount of water diverted into the canal to serve raw water customers. And then he went on to say it includes actual water use, loss in the system, theft, spoilage, tailwater. And so, but when you were talking, you said that carriage water was limited to loss in the system, theft, spillage, tailwater.
No, it's the total amount of, the volume of, it's the difference between the volume of water purchased and the volume of water that has to be released to address water loss, water seepage, and carrying the water down the canal. So it's referred to as a carriage. It's the amount of water that is needed to carry what is purchased.
So it doesn't include the actual water, I mean, carriage water doesn't include actual customer water use.
It's on top of it, so it.
Correct, it's on top of it, got it.
Yeah, it's the difference, it's the formula that is based off of a calculation that's applied, what was it, Jim? It's like 1.4 or 1.1 times what's purchased?
You may have to put in 10 in order to deliver 8.
Right, got it.
And that's delta the two.
The delta. Right. Carriage is referred to as the delta.
Okay.
Right, so I think in that sentence, system loss, carriage, water, seepage, I think carriage is redundant. Is the carriage water includes this, or raw water loss includes this? But to say carriage water in addition to seepage and evaporation, I think carriage, the definition of carriage water in my mind includes seepage and evaporation. It's not in addition to it.
I would have swapped, I would have phrased the sentence as carriage water loss includes raw water system loss.
That's exactly right.
And everything, because that's the umbrella.
That's right.
That makes much more sense. Okay.
So we can make that edit if you desire.
Yeah, I think it clarifies.
I think it does.
Do you see where it is, Jim?
Page 22.
Yes. No problem.
Okay, and we've talked about fall water. Are there regular fall water customers that say buy fall water at the beginning of the season?
So fall water's not a guarantee, and in the past, we used to wait until September before we even made it available. In years of abundance, such as 2017, we knew we would have it available, so we set it up early in the year. People reserved it early when they reserved their summer water as well. But the normal procedure is not make it available until we know there's enough in storage.
So this year, anyone that paid for fall water, we're giving them a customer refund and things like that?
Nobody paid this year. We did not accept payments for it this year.
Okay. That's good. And then, on table 3-10, let me see, that's on page 28. And then, so table 3-10, the unrecoverable, and I have a problem with unrecoverable because, that's a very relative term.
It's like it goes into outer space or something.
It goes to the delta.
Yeah, and it's, anyway, so I have a problem with that word, but it says the unrecoverable is 16,359 to 59,527. And then the next page, on page 311, table 312, it says unrecoverable is 16,359 to 41,900.
Right.
And so the dry years, you're just saying dry years only, it's a lower amount? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Because that higher range comes in the wet years, we have to use more water.
Okay. And the reason why it's labeled as unrecoverable is so that it's a reflection of us not counting water that we can reuse twice.
And we're prohibited from reusing it twice?
It's gone, it's through the system, we have no physical way of
When we
recapturing it.
release it, we can't collect it. Potentially, I could clarify this a little bit. So in table 310, where it labels it as such, those totals that you see, the 16,359 to 59,527, are not all of our environmental flows. Our environmental flows are more than this. However, we're able to recapture some of those environmental flows and then send them to our customer base. The ones that are included in this table are truly environmental flows that leave the district and we can't get it back anymore.
And so our permits dictate exactly where we put this environmental flow? We can't negotiate where this goes?
That's what they did.
It was negotiated.
Okay, was negotiated.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's a lot more specific, a lot more water in the new one.
okay. Okay, all right, that's my question.
Okay. Good question. Anybody else? Director Heck, more questions?
Well, this has to do with the comments received, and I especially note the comments from Tom Last in the City of Grass Valley, where he talks about, being a little more accurate in the demand assumptions from the city's perspective. And our response was, gee, we didn't get any information from the city in time for inclusion. NID will continue to work with the city going forward. So my question then is, do we now have more information from the City of Grass Valley? Do not. What's the plan to get it? Or is it on them? I mean, it's like the ball in their court?
And Jim, maybe you can remember the dates, but we reached out to them a couple of times and did not get a response back. The weird thing, though, is that I will say many of the projects that are within the City of Grass Valley are actually in NID service area, and they're going to be NID's customers. And we included them in the projects that we're looking at.
Yeah, and so, like he mentioned.
Like Loma Rica Ranch, that's included in our document.
Right, and then he specifically mentioned that we didn't put in Dorsey Marketplace with 172 apartments. Was that included in?
That is in the NID service area.
It is an NID service area.
Yep, it's in the list of projects. But regardless, the point, I think, is that we will continue to work with them and see if we can keep good communication open to know if there's any other developments they're planning in the future that we can include in, especially as we move into the plan for water, that we can include in the planning document. And we did have Dorsey Marketplace, but we had an unknown amount of time.
Okay, so he cites 172 apartments plus the commercial uses. I just want us to get accurate information. And then, I note that there were no responses to, the Foothill Water Network comments, that I could find, and maybe it just got misplaced, but I did not see, how these guys, or somebody did a very nice job. Having the response, which was very good to see that.
One response.
Yeah, and these aren't page numbers, so I can't help you guys, but it's towards the very end.
It just says, so the Bear River review of flows as discussed in the AWMP and UWMP workshop, including the coordinated operation agreements and blah, blah, blah. Historical runoff data evaluated estimates the district average runoff supply does not include supply from the Bear River and South Beaver River. We will investigate these sources in more detail. And that brings a point to me. I think there was 15 or more references to the plan for water in this document.
Yeah.
I just can't express enough criticality of using the AWA manual of integrated water management practices and really starting fresh and just with fresh lens, fresh eyes, fresh process, and really trying to understand these from a scientific and rational perspective. I strongly encourage that.
So back to my question, was there specific responses? I mean, they brought up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, areas of concern, dealing with in-stream flow requirements, public process, and so on, and I didn't see any responses to them. Is that?
Yeah, so when we reviewed this, when you look at our responses, other than the one we discussed a little bit with regards to that Director Peters just read off with regards to supply of equipment, et cetera. That most all of those comments weren't specific requests or changes to be made to our urban water management plan. They are gonna be stuff that we will be addressing and dealing with as we move forward with this plan for water. So we didn't have specific comments to each one because they all relate to the planning process that we're gonna be dealing with in the future.
And we need to bring these comments back out as we go through the plan for water process.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, so that we capture, so that we don't go over the same ground twice, right?
And I do plan on reaching out to Ms. Sheehan to more understand her concerns in general about our previous planning processes, so I can start diving a little bit deeper on some of these concerns stated in this particular letter. But I do agree with Mr. Roderick that although the comments are very valid and great comments, they're difficult to address specifics.
They don't fit into the framework you're talking
But
about.
that doesn't mean that they're not relevant comments, so.
Yeah.
I think she even prefaced that in the introduction.
Yeah,
She said that herself.
yeah,
That,
yeah.
this is more pertinent to the bigger picture.
And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of comments that we received for the PMs and for the ag plan. We should bring out, when we begin the urban, or the plan for water, to bring those to the fore at the beginning and then start from there.
Yeah.
We will bring them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, I think that's it for me.
This may be a good time to say we did get a district comment
Yes.
this morning from Diane Suarez. She addressed a couple of our responses and then had some additional comments in here, so we will make sure we include all that.
You include that into this, thank you.
Ms. Suarez, it looks like at least Diana is on the phone. Maybe she can come up for
Is she on the phone?
public hearing.
Yeah, sure.
Are we ready to
Any
open
more
the
board
public
comments
hearing?
before we go to public comment? Or public,
Right. Public hearing.
public hearing?
So we need to open.
Okay, at this time, we'll open it up for, public hearing. Diana, I see you got your hand raised, and we just had your letter. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much, President Beerwagon, and I thank the board for this enlightening discussion and this wonderful presentation. I had a written comment here, but you've addressed a lot of my statements, and I did express difficulty in determining where the numbers that lead to the raw water demand and supply assertions originate. The discussion was very enlightening for me, and I thank you very much. One of the things that I did ask that wasn't covered so far is I asked to please separate out the treated water demand from the raw water demand for the reliability analyses in order to meet the objectives of the urban water supply and demand in tables 310, 311, 312, 54, 55, and 56. The response I got was NID elects to blah, blah, blah. In other words, no, we don't want to. And I think it could have been a better response. In tables 54, 55, and 56, the columns simply include supply, demand, and the difference. This methodology is non-responsive and leaves out a key component to an urban water management plan. In fact, the next sentence affirms that, quote, the district's water shortage contingency plan addresses different measures for treated water versus raw water customers. And I think it's an important point to make and an important addition to your analysis. And finally, the universal response, quote, the remaining comments address long-term planning issues that can be reviewed in the plan for water. That's understandable, but maybe a little bit more, well, here, I'll just read what I had written. This plan for water process has been a panacea for loose ends and unanswered questions for years. No worries, it will be in the plan for water. I think a verbal assurance to the population on what issues are important and what issues will be brought forward would help. You know, it's a kind of a turnoff when someone writes a 11-page comment and they get a one-sentence response. However, I am grateful for the responses I did receive. but I did also get this, no worries, it will be in the plan for water. And I think at the very least, the major issues must be delineated, acknowledged, and brought forward in a demonstrable way to guarantee the stakeholders that these issues are important to the district, and there is a process and methodology in place to find the answers and address the issues. And I look forward to this wonderful change in attitude with gratitude. I think you guys are doing a great job and I appreciate it. There was another issue I had, reducing legitimate planning documents to compliance-only reports smacks of reluctance to do the hard work of progressing to modern, sophisticated platforms. So hopefully the plan for water will help us engage in a comprehensive water budget and integrated, truly integrated water management. With new leadership, the future is bright. I am encouraged by the enlightened discussions at the board meetings and a willing, supportive community to tackle these opportunities collectively and collaboratively. And I would like to point out one statement that the NID made in this document, quote, NID, oh, I'm finishing up here, by the way, quote, NID is committed to controlling its own water resources in a self-determining manner. From a larger perspective, I would like to quote the Foothill Water Network. The network's point of view is that our rivers and watersheds are whole unto themselves, and we as a community extract our needs for water and energy from them while benefiting from a healthy river. Without a healthy river system and larger watershed, there is less reliable water and energy for our community and for the downstream benefits that support our watershed's health. Best wishes to you guys. I really do think you're doing a good job and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Do you want to respond?
Sure, if you
Jim.
Great, yeah.
Can we continue with the public hearing and then?
Yeah. Okay, anybody else like to participate in the public hearing for the Urban Water Management Plan? Star 9 on your phone.
Diana.
Diana, a different Diana.
Gamzon.
Gamzon, go ahead.
Good day, everyone. My name is Diana Gamzon, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance. We are the local trade association that represents the legal industry through education and public policy initiatives. And as a key stakeholder here in the county, we have not had any outreach by NID on the plans related to cannabis for this urban water plan, despite our request to participate in this process. So we want to ensure that all stakeholders are engaged in this process, and so we will follow up with NID to ensure that we are part of this discussion. And specifically, we would like to discuss what was brought up today about the proposal to classify legal cannabis as an industrial industry. So I will follow up about that and we look forward to engaging. Thank you. And appreciate everyone's hard work on this.
You're welcome. All right, anybody else like to comment this morning? The Urban Water Management Plan as presented. Star 9 on your phone. Last chance. Like to comment, anybody from the public? Okay. Chip, did you want to make a comment? Go ahead. That?
The magic words are close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing, then you can comment.
Again.
Thank you.
I'm still in training. Okay, so at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you all for who participated. Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Some good comments, and I appreciate the comments from Diana, and if I could take a second, she specified or requested that the district separate out treated water usage and demands from ag water usage and demands, especially and specifically for shortages. And I think that's what I heard from her. And I just wanted to let her know that we tend to agree, and we attempted to do that during the last drought, 2015, and submitted that to the state for proof that we had ample enough supplies to
includes our treated water customers for multiple years, and the state denied us reviewing it that way. They said you have to include all of your users as a whole when doing your availability analysis. So that's the reason why we have to combine them in these documents. That's per the state's direction.
Good to
So
know.
hopefully a little clarification for
Thank you,
us.
Chip.
We do in table 3.9 clearly spell out the top half of that table is treated water, the bottom half is raw, and then in-stream flows at the bottom of that. So we do have them. We just, for our planning purposes and drought contingency planning, the state wants us to combine them all together. That helps.
Thank you, Chip. Director Transit.
We ready for a resolution?
Oh, I have comments on resolution.
Yeah, actually, I did too. Maybe they're the same.
Okay. We will take a 5-minute break, have some more clarification before our motion.
$40 cash. It's like,
Okay.
Yeah, I respond to that. No, there's a whole week in August, she gave a bunch of different dates.
We need to have
And then they're wagging it on
individually,
the line again.
Okay.
but we need to.
Yeah, we should.
Rich for live. Okay, we're back in session, still talking about the river water management plan updates. I think there was a few more comments and questions from the board. Who'd like to go first? Laura Peters.
I'll go. This is on the resolution specific, on the language of the resolution, that I just had some comments and clarification, to clean it up a little, I think. So the fourth whereas, right now as written, it says, whereas California Department of Water Resources requires that the plan be adopted and submitted to them. It's really the California Water Code requires it be adopted and filed. It's not the Department of Water Resources that requires it, it's the California Water Code. Well, instead of California Department, I'd say, whereas California Water Code requires the UWMP to write it and file it. And then the next whereas, there's the first sentence, whereas the district has therefore, I don't know what that therefore adds to the statement. I would just say, the district has prepared and circulated a draft. I would delete the therefore. And then further down it says, for public review and by counties and cities and other interested parties and properly noticed hearing. And I would say, and a properly noticed hearing regarding hearing was, and a properly noticed hearing was held by the district's board of directors on July 14th, as required by Government Code 6066. And the way it's written, including publication of notice. Well, we already said we published the notice, and so the last part would just say, and other interested parties, and a properly noticed public hearing regarding said UWMP was held by the district's board of directors on July 14th, as required by Government Code 6066. It just clarifies that statement to make it easier to understand.
Okay.
And then the next whereas the district did prepare, well, we already said, before that we prepared it. So I would say the district shall file said plan with the department. Because we've already, one of them said we already prepared it. Does that make sense? Does this make sense?
Make those changes.
And then on the next page, number three and number 4, one of them says it's 2020 update, and one of them says it's a 2021 update. So I believe it's a 2020. We need to change number 4.
Okay.
Okay, and then, there was a thing, and I don't remember where I read it, but it said that due to COVID, we're not going to make this document available to the public at the district.
What?
There was something I read that said that.
Like a hard copy available for review?
Yeah, it said a hard copy is not going to be available for review due to COVID, something like that. It was on the internet. Where did I read that?
Was it in the notice that went out?
It was in the notice.
Because we hadn't opened up this building yet when the noticing went out.
Okay.
So nobody could come in to sit down and review a document here at the district office. Now we started this hybrid approach where we could have a copy that's available for folks to come in if they like to. We can make a copy available on counter or something.
Okay, I'd appreciate that, because, okay. So those were my comments. Do you guys agree with those potential changes?
Yeah,
I thought that was fine.
very good.
Director, Heck, you had a,
Oh, no. She caught what
okay.
I was gonna say. She covered it.
Nobody else. Okay. Director Johansson, you can go ahead.
Ready?
Yeah.
I move to adopt resolution number 2021-24, adopting, directing, filing, and implementing the Nevada Irrigation District Urban Water Management Plan.
As
modified.
by Director Peters' comment.
Want that, okay, as modified by Director Peters, and with all the whereases.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay. Do I have public comment for the resolution? No, okay.
Nope.
Don't worry. There, I was ready to do it, okay. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4. Aye. Division 2.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you all for all the participants
Great work.
and the staff. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, English
next.
Meadow.
Next, good morning, Nessa. How are you?
Would you rather sit here? Makes it much more.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Whatever you think.
So fat.
I know, I do that same thing, although now I have overflowing,
Did you purge some of the paper?
I have overflowing bookshelf now.
Oh, I have an overflowing floor.
I had that, now I have overflowing bookshelf.
Well, Laura was telling me how tall her stack was.
It's empty now. All my papers.
There's a country western song on that one.
Oh, probably
I
is.
got an overflowing love.
Off you
Okay.
go.
Good morning, Nessa. We're here to talk about the English Meadow Floodplain Restoration Project.
Good morning. Good
Yeah.
morning, directors. Good morning, staff. Good morning, public. Today, we are here to discuss this incredible project we've been working on since 2016. As you saw in the staff report, the English Meadows Restoration Project is proposing to go in and restore 200 acres within the meadow to address the channel condition currently, as well as doing an additional 180 acres of forest treatment on the slopes immediately adjacent to the meadow. This is a really exciting project to bring to you, actually, at this moment today, because we're talking about water supply, long-term watershed health and functionality, all these incredible, amazing, good things. And I am very excited to come forward to bring the project to you. We also have, I believe, our team available for any questions when we get to that part of the presentation. And our project team includes Leslie Mink from Plymouth Corporation. She has decades of meadow restoration experience that she brings to the project. Kevin Woodhoff is the consulting forester that we work with on so many of our projects. He's out of Nevada City. Under the Trees is the name of his outfit. We have many of us here that are district staff that have worked on this project over the years. And then we also have Janelle Nolan and Sarah Reese from Janelle Nolan and Associates. They have helped us to prepare our CEQA documents, and they are also drafting our permit. There are additional members on our team that include researchers from Sacramento State University and local Sierra Nevada biologists. They're not here today, but they are part of this team. This is truly an interdisciplinary approach of getting to know the meadow and coming up with this design approach and moving forward. So with that, I think we go right into the PowerPoint, Chris, because I think I've covered everything in the staff report in the PowerPoint presentation.
You know, I just want to make one observation. First of all, fabulous, great work. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much. And also the leverage that you have accomplished for 40,000 leveraging $1.2 million is, you know, that's a 30 times leverage. And that's pretty amazing. And so I just want everybody to understand that's huge, 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 huge. So thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Director Heck, for recognizing that. It's actually 40,000 a few years in a row.
Well, no, I know, but still, the leverage is off the hook, you know. It's really great to have done this.
Meadows, I think in the last 20 years, we could say we've started to recognize through watershed science and different studies that have been done, this incredible value that meadows play in the Sierra Nevada region. They're just a small fraction of the landscape, but they are these hot spots for biodiversity. They're these places that absorb peak runoff events and then bring them into the river when you want them later in the summer months. They sequester carbon. They have really unique features, and English Meadow has all of these. And so it's just been, you know, it's such a fun place to work on. And then it's also, there's such a movement ahead to look at how do our watersheds function, recognizing our water comes from watersheds. We need to be up there understanding them, taking care of them,
that's our long-term water supply.
Mhm.
So it's,
Right.
it's just great.
It is. It's just, it's done a fabulous job.
It's a presentation.
We already have questions.
Should we let her have her do
Go
a
ahead,
presentation
Rich.
first?
This is
I
a
have
quick one.
I have a couple too.
Back in the 70s, when I was working in the Forest Service in June Lake, Mammoth Lakes area, they were teaching natural succession. The floodplains and meadows would go to trees and yada yada, and now we're trying to reverse that because we see so many more benefits in reversing that, or how did that happen?
So here's my understanding of the meadow dynamic, and then I'll get to the presentation, I promise, is that meadows, these wet environments aren't that hospitable to the conifer species, that we're seeing this meadow encroachment idea. So if they remain intact and functioning, they say as much as 50% of our meadows are not functioning. So they've been dried out, they're dewatered, like English meadow, there's all sorts of issues with it. But because it's dried out, that's where you see the lodgepole pine encroachment.
Right.
And as it trends that direction, it's kind of self-fulfilling because they drink so much water. Every tree is a straw.
Mhm.
And so what we're gonna try to do is push it back onto a different path. And so that would be my answer there, but it's the understanding that these wet pockets are incredibly important from an ecosystem perspective, as well as a watershed, water supply piece. That answers your question.
Yeah, no, a lot more benefits.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and allow the presentation. Oh, I thought you had.
I'm so happy to hear this, because I think that even in our planning process and our plan for water, we need an environmental water management plan. We need to take care of environment, and we need to put a higher priority on the environment as well, and utilize and not see it as a burden on us, but see it as, the more we take care of it, the more it takes care of us. And so I support you.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna roll in. All right, so today, what we're opening here is this presentation. It's also our public hearing for a CEQA document. During this presentation, I'm gonna give you a bit of an overview of both the timeline, just for the current year, as well as project location. What is the project? What are we proposing to do? Where are we at in terms of our studies and analysis of the site? So we'll present our CEQA document, the proposed mitigation measures, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan. We will briefly touch on the project permit, and then open it up to public comment after we have any comments from the board. This is the most recent timeline. Since January, we've really worked on developing our initial study and looking through the environmental checklist and really evaluating what are the potential impacts associated with the work we want to undertake. We've been working with Janelle Nolan and Sarah Reese. They have brought great experience forward and expertise that was needed to kind of corral us in. We've all worked on this area for many years, and so I think we've got all kinds of creative, excited energy. They were very good at getting us to clarify and really put it down clearly on paper. What are we proposing to do, and to evaluate the environmental impacts that could occur in the work we want to undertake. We have also reached out, and through our tribal consultation process, built bridges with the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California, as well as the United Auburn Indian Community. We have now partnered with them and their tribal cultural officers. They've provided input, and that the input they gave us, as well as comments, is included in this red line strike down of the ISMND that we received, and we'll call it red line, but it's the blue line strikeout as well. We are now at a point that we have completed our public review process. We have received comments as well as responded to those comments. And that brings us to the hearing today. I would actually like to maybe pause briefly so you understand the comments that were received in our responses. I would like to invite Janelle, if you're on, to maybe review for us quickly the comments that we received and what our response was.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I'll just give you a quick overview of the comment letters that we received. We did receive 7 comment letters that included one from tribes, some from resource agencies, a special interest group, the South Yuba Citizens League, and some interested public. The comments received resulted in us doing some clarification in the initial study mitigated neg deck, and that clarification was clarifying mitigation measures. We did receive comments from Fish and Wildlife as well as Cal Department of Fish and Game, and they provided to us mitigation measures that we anticipate seeing in future permits that we will be obtaining for implementation of the project. And so what we did is clarified those mitigation measures so that they mirrored the language that that they are planning to incorporate into our permits. So we're a little ahead of game on that one. We also clarified information on methods for the project description, for dewatering, for long-term monitoring, and then clarified kind of information on the details of material that would be used. So altogether, we, as NASA had said, a red line strikeout version is included, and those red line items are clarification of mitigation measures, and in particular, also the project description. And with that, NASA, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Janelle. So moving forward from today, once we get through our discussion and if you adopt and take action, then we will be preparing our documents and submitting them to our staff and partners at the Wildlife Conservation Board. We are slated to appear on their agenda, as Director Heck brought up, for a grant that would be awarded August 26th, and that would be required to be completed CEQA, and we're right online to do that. And the exciting part is once we get through all of that, get through contracting, we then would hopefully begin to open up access to the site. Currently, there's no roaded or vehicular access in this summer, with anticipation of full implementation next year and the following year. There we go. So to locate it, so what you see here is the map of the region where the meadow occurs. You see the small box, sorry, this looks much better in a written report. The small box in the middle is the state of California. English Meadow is approximately a mile upstream of Jackson Meadows Reservoir, one of our largest, very important high elevation storage reservoirs, approximately 6,500 feet in elevation. It's about 35 miles north and a little west of Truckee. That would be the Highway 89 corridor, and you head out west. It is part of the Middle Yuba River headwaters, adjacent to English Meadows. So if you think about it as a patchwork or mosaic of benefits, Peraza Meadows is over one ridgeway. Independence Lake is nearby. It's within the Tahoe National Forest. So the idea of creating a patchwork effect of restoration and high-quality habitat benefits many of the species that move through the area. So that's it. Okay, I'll click the screen. Okay. What we want to do here, our project, is to complete floodplain restoration, which is basically to reattach or elevate the Thalweg, or the deepest channel within the Middle Yuba River, because it's currently downcutting and it's no longer connected and actively inundating or re-wetting its floodplain on a regular interval. So we want to address the condition of the main channel, and then we also want to complete fire fuel reduction treatments within the forest that surrounds it on the immediately adjacent slopes. This is a 380-acre project. We own more acreage than that in this immediate area. We own 560 immediately, and then there's more downstream, et cetera. This is the area that we would actually be able to touch and work on due to rocky outcroppings or some cliff areas that we're not going to be working in. The purpose of our project is to improve the watershed and floodplain functionality in this area. Again, we want to begin this summer, and then we will continue the following 2 years.
So if you go, I'll toggle back and forth, well, I don't need to. So the gray outline, is district-owned property. We're on the Middle Yuba River watershed, that's the green line. It flows from the bottom right-hand corner up to the left. It gives you upstream to downstream direction. So in this image here, the pink line is the 380-acre treatment area. The green hatched or slashed, or however you want to describe that, is the forest treatment area. The yellow is the meadow restoration component of the project, with the river flowing right through the middle of it. So that white line is going to be an access road that we're going to reopen. That's the road that I mentioned. We'll hopefully start working on later, early fall. It enters the district gray square there off of Tahoe National Forest, and we've already worked with our partners at the Tahoe National Forest to gain permission to do this work, and it's a temporary use agreement to come in, open the road for the purposes of this project alone. And our project goal to kind of go a little deeper into it and drill down. Part of now you're looking at an area that we currently walk into English Meadows, the slope wetland, and you're looking upstream to where the river flows in. So what's happening in this meadow due to past activities on the landscape and the current conditions now is that during the peak runoff events in the spring, there's a lot of channel scour where it's picking up sediment and it's transporting it through the meadow as it erodes the beds and banks of the river channel and depositing it into Jackson Meadows Reservoir. From a water storage perspective, we don't want to do that. And from a habitat and restoration perspective, the aquatic community is being degraded by the current conditions. The meadow is in a drying bend. So what we want to do is push it back, and it's called a process facilitation approach, where we're using, after studying the meadow and the river for 4 and 5 years, we see how it's currently functioning, what the changes are year to year, and we're using that information to guide the work we want to do. So we want to reduce sediment transport into Jackson Meadows Reservoir. We want to improve the floodplain river connectivity so that we're going to promote rewetting of the meadow that will then hold water. We will basically elevate and recharge the shallow groundwater that's in this meadow system. We want to enhance habitat for meadow-dependent species and the aquatic species. By thinning the forest, as many of us know through current literature and decades of forestry, by thinning a forest up above the snow line, you're going to promote the snow to accumulate under the canopy layers, under the forest itself. You want to accumulate the snow on the ground where it can then melt and enter the ecosystem as opposed to being caught in the canopy where it evaporates. You have sublimation. So we want to improve our snowpack and our retention, again, helping with our long-term water supply objectives. And we also want to address this lodgepole pine encroachment into the meadow, and we would use these lodgepole to build our structures and do our work. We would also be using mastication and chipping to add more organic material, and our hope to keep them from just regrowing is that by wetting it, they're not going to want to be there. Lodgepoles don't like to have, as they say, their feet wet. So in a flooded environment, it doesn't trend. It trends toward willows, it trends towards there's cottonwood, more of the riparian species, the sedges. Our project has basically 3 main objectives or implementation strategies. One is to work within the main stems to install woody debris jams and riffles. These are structures that will utilize the cobbles and the gravels in the system. The system's filled with multiple gravel bars. So we're going to use the on-site material as well as the small boulders that are all throughout the system and the lodgepole pine to create these structures that are essentially perpendicular to flow that will raise the base level of the main stem channel to connect it closer to its floodplain. So as you move the channel up, it's going to re-wet the floodplain more often. And it'll hold the water there. Water slows down, it drops its sediment, it loses its erosive force. So that's where we're heading with our structures. There are a number of dewatering channels on the north side of the meadow that we think from, decades past, not, maybe the 20s, 30s, where the area, that's on the Sierra County, also, to bring it back, the north side of the meadow is Sierra County, and the south side is Nevada County. So we have 2 counties here. So it looks like dewatering channels that were constructed maybe to promote grazing. Well, we want to hold the water on the landscape, so we're going to treat the dewatering channels. Some of them have turned into head cuts, which are basically an unraveling that moves up the meadow towards the slope. So we'll treat those head cut areas. And there's one big bank that we're going to also stabilize. And then we'll do this 180 acres of forest thinning, which essentially targets the 10-inch and below diameter, the smaller trees. So on a per acre basis, you would have tens of trees that have a larger diameter rather than hundreds of trees that the average size of the trees is much smaller, and they're all drinking it up and competing for the same resources. That bottom photo is not at English Meadow. It's one of our other projects near Scott Flat, but that's what we want to head toward. So this, oh yes, and this has a lot of detail. It's hard to see. This is basically our project design in a diagram. The pink line now no longer represents the 380 acres. So I noticed that when I was looking at the presentation yesterday. Again, this is now the 200-acre meadow footprint. You see on the slopes all those nice green tree dots. That's the 180-acre area that we will be working. This is the meadow itself. The road is now black. What you see are a series of little red stars, and that's the indicator, that's the symbol for our debris jams. Then you see these little stacks that are riffles. They're a very similar structure, but you'll place one to raise the elevation of the thalweg, or the deepest part of the channel, and a riffle is placed where you have side channels, and you want to promote re-wetting and reutilization of side channels. You see the black and white little bands on the south side of the river. Those are trees in areas where we're going to make it difficult. English Meadow is within the English Meadow grazing allotment, which is administered by the Forest Service. Grazing allotments go back a long time to the Homestead era, where they've got big circles. Some of it is Tahoe National Forest, some of it is district-owned property, some of it is SPI, private. And this meadow currently is not being grazed through any lease that we have in place, but sometimes the cows come in. So what we're going to do is make it really difficult for the cows to be in the meadow by putting trees down and blocking the trails that they cut, and telling them to basically get out of the meadow, get up in the trees, because they push them through to get to a higher meadow that's within the Tahoe National Forest. That's the south side. On the north side, you see those straight lines that are a brown color. Those are the dewatering ditches that we're going to be treating, as well as mid-meadow, you see the big orange arc. That's basically a section, a meander in the river that's running up to the north, moving. It's this whole unraveling head cut area that we will treat and stabilize and revegetate with willows. So I'm saying words like debris jam, bank stabilization. I just wanted to take a minute to talk about what we mean, which is, maybe I've said this maybe 50 times, but I'll say it one more time. We want to raise the elevation of that channel so it's not down cutting when it's got its highest peak flow. That's when it's most erosive. We want to push it up so it spreads out, wets the adjacent areas. They will saturate and absorb. We want to slow the velocity of those flows down. So when you put something that's perpendicular to flow, you're going to slow down that the velocity of the water that moves through. We want it to drop its sediment. We want to grade the channel or raise it up. And we're going to stabilize areas of active erosion. To accomplish that, we're proposing to construct approximately 45 structures to treat this 250-foot area of active erosion.
So in the 70s, we put in gabions, like on Little Hot Creek, to build it up, and then fenced off to cattle.
Yep.
You're not going to fence off in this case. but are you using gabions and, or just wooden?
So we're gonna use,
Yeah.
Perfectly.
on-site materials. We aren't thinking about a river that's as active and flashy as this one, that if you create these hard points, they can deflect, it can move. We're putting in the material that we see that's growing within the channel and that you already see in the log jams. So we won't be using gabions, we'll be using larger trees with roots and leaves and needles and tact. We're gonna put them in the channel so that they basically get stacked up and keyed in, and then we'll use on-site rock to help hold them. And then use, in this picture here, that dark W-shaped line shows the existing, this is a cross-section. Know that this is not a design for a specific treatment, this is an example of what our treatments will be. This is a typical design. So the logs will be placed in and basically keyed in to hold them there. And then we'll use the on-site gravels that would have been basically scraped to the side to fill it in, so that you're not gonna create, you know, so the elevations are then tagged to each other, so you're not gonna create a system of pools that would then undercut. This is all part of the design thinking, but we aren't gonna use gabions per se.
What's that word again?
Gabion?
Gabion, yeah.
It's a cage with rock.
Oh, cage with rock.
Yeah, you've certainly seen them, and it's,
That's right.
yeah, and then sometimes you'll see them in a project where they're over here and now the river's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's, yeah, it's just, you know, evolution and thinking about, you know, what works, what doesn't.
This is a lot more,
You're gonna be human beavers.
Yeah.
this is a lot more,
We've invited beavers, we would like beavers to come to the project area. So, recent project histories, that since 2016, we've been working annually up in English Meadow. This is a picture of our team. It includes some of our AmeriCorps staff, some of the district staff from 2 years ago. We go up, and I think I've already run through kind of the breadth of the disciplines that are participating, from doing floral and faunal studies. We've done a rare plant inventory, so we have our rare plant list. We've done wetland delineation. We've got multiple years of biological surveys for birds, critters, frogs. We have done a archaeological inventory and survey of the site. We have worked with Kevin Cornwell, Dr. Cornwell at Sacramento State University is a geologist. He's surveyed the area, so we've got a geologic inventory as well as a series of groundwater monitoring wells. And our intention with the groundwater monitoring wells, and district staff installed and completed a stream gauge just downstream, so it's below the meadow but above Jackson Meadows Reservoir, is we now have 4 years of pre-project data to know what does the hydrograph look like.
This is great.
That is really.
And with the groundwater monitoring network, we will know what's the groundwater look like. And they're gonna go back up this summer to collect data and see how the wells are functioning, see if we need to install more. But to know, is there, you know, does this project, we have a number of hypotheses we're floating, but does it really change the groundwater elevation? Are we able to achieve, we've calculated approximately a 420-foot acre-foot storage gain potential. Do we move toward that? Do we see a change in the hydrograph so that the peaks are brought down and the troughs are brought up? So that's where we're going with all this data collection. And again, we've been motivated. This photo here is one of the fens. Fens are these really rare peat bog communities. They're organic and muddy and interesting and have rare and unusual plants and critters. We have 4 in the meadow.
Fine.
And so it's just, and it's amazing because the meadow was inundated. And so still, we've completed working with Dr. Michelle Stevens from Sac State. She's done CRAM, C-R-A-M is the acronym, which is California Rapid Assessment Method. She's done CRAM inventories on the main river channel and some of the slopes, the slope wetlands. We score really high in spite of, this is the history of English Meadow.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Those 2 historic dams, they were up in the meadow, they weren't down where the dam is now, is that correct?
No, well, not where our dam is.
Okay.
But
They were up there in the meadow.
There's a rocky,
Yes.
there's a rocky,
Because I think there's still some evidence of the last dam there. There's some side rock, you can see where it was.
Those wing dams, yes.
Yes.
And this is multiple inundation periods with different dams. One failed, it was reconstructed. Anecdotally, the history is that the second one was then blown up
Blown up, yeah.
by farmers at a Yuba.
Yep,
right?
that's the theory.
That's the idea.
They wanted more water,
History.
and so apparently, the history is it blew up and then it flooded hours
They
later.
didn't want the hydraulic mining, that's what they didn't want, the hydraulic,
And it was destroying the zone.
so they, yeah.
So it's an incredible
So-
history.
Are they on the property, that dam site, the bottom one there?
They're on remember our property looks like it was a square with two bunny ears.
Right.
They're on the bunny ears, they're not within the project area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for context, because, and then my next question, I'm sorry, you started the picture, there you go. How much did they contribute to the degradation of the meadow, that dam, those two dams both failing, right?
Well, and what we know, once you create a reservoir, the river flows in out of a steep area, which truly is, and the headwaters in the middle Yuba up there drop right in. We have these layers, which is why it's been so unstable. You've got these layers of sediment and gravels and cobbles and sediment and not a lot of organic material. So for the plants to establish, to create this healthy river system that's nice and meandering with multiple channels, it just blows out every time there's a high flow because you've got these unstable sediment layers, which is why we've got the geologist in. So he's done coring and he understands and has explained to us how the system restoration should be very successful based on everything we understand, but it needs that process push to bring back organic material, which is why the small trees that will be chipped will be spread out to bring more organic material, because some of it is so dry, it's just friable soil that doesn't have what it needs. So you put water and some organic material, it'll come back.
Amazing.
So that's what it looked like in the late 1800s. This is what it looks like now. So here you see, this is the upper end of the Middle Yuba River where it enters the top of the project area on the far right. That section of the river tends to go subsurface, and then we have the perennial reach that we just had our staff up there yesterday with some of our project partners. Interestingly, everything we're seeing this year, the perennial reach is flowing, it's cold, it's got water in it. So meadows are these like incredible spots. You see on the left is our environmental resources technician, Cameron, that's at our water gauge. And below is our hydrographer, Ashley Vandermeer. And so she has been a big part of collecting annual data and going in and surveying our points to make sure our data is very consistent and dependable. And that brings us to here. So what we're proposing today is coming forward to ask you to consider and adopt this initial study, the mitigated negative declaration for the project. We have gone through and evaluated potential impacts associated with the work we want to undertake. All of these impacts can be mitigated. We don't have any unmitigatable, that's the term, impacts. This section 1.2.3 in the document contains the measures that we focused on that include things like employing best management practices to ensure that impacts to air quality, to traffic are addressed and minimized during project construction. We have looked at the biological resources. We've set aside areas that are biologically sensitive. We've set aside areas that have cultural historic significance to make sure they are protected. We've, as you've seen in the mitigation measures, we will ensure that there is an ongoing training and educational program of any personnel brought on site using qualified individuals to train them whether it's about biology or archaeology. And we're working again with the locally affiliated tribes to make sure that our work is in step with their understanding and their concerns about this site specifically. The mitigation measures, you saw them in the document explained minimum mitigation monitoring plan. There's a lot of biology up there. And we're aware of it and we'll protect it and we'll benefit it when we put this on the ground.
What kind of fish are up there?
Yeah.
Fish capture and relocation.
And do you need help capturing them?
Yeah, that's what my husband wanted to know.
Board fishing trip.
Yeah, right. Fly fishermen, catch and release.
So rainbow trout are the only thing that's been found on site. What's interesting is that there is, and we've talked extensively about it, there are potential to have fish because in this area, you know, across one mountain ridge, there's Lahan cutthroat. And over in the other, so the issue is that between Jackson Meadows Reservoir and the project site is an impassable barrier. We have a bedrock waterfall, a couple of them, where we think essentially there's a minimum. No one has gotten there to measure it because it's not, but we've done the calculations. It's a minimum of a 15-foot vertical drop for one of them. So it's basically an impassable barrier. So we have some resident rainbows. We will be doing biological sweeps of all the active project areas. We'll essentially start and move down through the system. Before any activity begins, we'll sweep for any fish, frogs, anything that could have either been there or swam up or walked in.
And we put them back when we're done, or?
Yes, absolutely. And we also probably will be able to time a lot of our work with the natural drying process. So they move as the water moves. But there is a dewatering plan that will be part of our permit applications and our permit package. Permits, we will be obtaining and drafting them, working with our agency partners to anticipate, you know, any additional detail or requirements.
Amazing amount of coordination with all these agencies, you know, all government agencies with their own timelines and their own peculiarities, for lack of
Don't we get a pass on some of this stuff since we're trying to
do something
improve
good
rather than destroy something, right?
No pass.
And in all fairness, I mean, they truly understand the objective.
Yeah.
This is not this is a restoration project, and everyone is so excited, and they all have a responsibility and an authority that they need to exercise for resource code. So it's one of those that we're not being handled like we're going in to put in a development plan, but.
Or a dam.
No, not that even. So it's been, it's going fine. It's going fine, but it's onerous, yeah.
It's onerous, yeah, that's.
It's onerous, and at times very expensive to get it through, and that's the name of the game.
Director Johansson.
Yeah. Well, you said that so nicely. So how many meadows in NID watershed is there? Acres, total acres, and how many meadows are on land owned by NID? Total. So can we replicate this somewhere else?
So I hope this is the first of 3 projects. Sonny brought that up. So English Meadow would be our first. We have Middle and Shotgun Meadows that we don't own the entirety, but they're just over a ridgeline or so. They're behind Lindsay Lake. What's that ridgeline? Grouse Ridge.
Grouse Ridge.
And we own parts of them, and the Forest Service also owns parts of them. And so we're looking at, I'll get out to visit those meadows because we've learned this is a multi-year planning process, clearly. And so we're working with Tahoe National Forest staff. It's been really exciting as Randy Westmoreland left. He's one of the meadow restoration experts, often cited through the forest. Rachel Hutchinson has gone up. So she's local out of Nevada City, works with Circle, and has gone up. So Rachel is the meadow contact up for that area. And so I think the Tahoe National Forest they love meadow restoration. But then we're going to bring in that mixture of CEQA as well as we've got now federal land. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think there are partnership agreements that we can undertake. So I hope to do 2 more after we get this one on the ground. And then, of course, meadows are all about adaptive management. So what we learn by doing this project and then the monitoring we will do means we will go in to continue to manipulate and work with this one as needed. and then we take those lessons and take them to the next project.
Director Peters.
This is fantastic. This really makes me happy. I have a question. I didn't see, is it close to any roads, or do you have to get in with an ATV, or how do you access the meadow?
We all want to visit.
Yeah, right now we're walking in, but it's not far. It's less than a mile. It's Meadow Lake Road, so you come in off of Highway 89, you drive in, kind of Pass Road or toward Jackson Meadows
On the
Reservoir.
north side.
Mm-hmm. And you wrap around Jackson Meadows Reservoir Dam.
Mm-hmm.
Start to head like you're gonna go to Bowman, but you're gonna go left on Meadow Lake Road.
Yeah.
And then there's this one area, we call it the parking lot, which is some old logging thing on Forest Service. We leave our cars there, and then there's a footpath. So I'd be happy to do a field trip at any time.
Yay, count us
yeah.
Should we have the whole board go, Dustin? Can we do that?
We
You have to agendize.
We could do a public meeting up there.
Public
I don't know where
meeting.
we're putting our public notice at, but we can figure it out.
Mike will come for public hearing,
Yeah.
public comment.
With his fishing pole.
Fishing pools aren't allowed.
And so what are the inputs to the meadow? Is it only that, you said middle fork of the Yuba?
So it is the middle fork of the Yuba, and we have French Creek comes in, and I think Secret Creek, we call it. It comes out of Secret Lake. So there are a couple of other tributaries that come in.
Yeah.
You'll see
not
them
much
on the
of a-
map.
And so, yeah, so I guess my question is, because a lot of times, if the water has to cross a road or anything like that, and there's culverts in the road, and it's undersized or whatever, and the velocity coming into the meadow is already much higher than normal, but is that the case there? Is the water, when it enters the meadow, is it a nice low velocity?
Yeah, the only real road that you're thinking of that would be
Have a, like a
affected
culvert in
by,
it?
by water flow coming off of the peaks to the west and then south are really one Forest Service dirt road.
With
And-
rocks like this.
Yeah, it's just, it's dirt, but then it inundates as it comes down into the meadow and it filters through. It takes a little bit to get to the meadow,
Yeah.
but,
So there's no off meadow structures that we're not aware of, that if we go and fix the meadow, and then there's still this problem that's off the meadow?
I don't think so. I mean, on the south side, we have Meadow Lake Road, which is pretty rough, and it may have issues, but they're far, and they would have different, they've got small tributaries.
Good.
I'm sure they have culverts to get it across. That drive in, though, we're all gonna need four-wheel drive with clearance. You bump in, and it's slow rolling. But up above in the true, the uppermost headwaters, I don't think there are any culverts that we've identified.
Because isn't that road is up in the woods, up in the trees on the road to French Lake and Meadow.
I gotta go to that upper.
you're in,
Never
there's
been
no
there.
impervious surfaces up there besides this
Right.
one road that kind of skirts around the south side of it.
Yeah.
It's to the west.
I
Spectacular.
can't wait to see.
Well, there is one main highway, the Pacific Crest Trail.
Well,
Pacific
yeah.
Crest.
That's a little on the east.
Yeah.
So we have the PCT
That's right.
but again,
That's right.
up and out and up above the Meadow Bowl itself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great. Fantastic.
Director Holt.
Thank you, NASA, for the great work, and others have said, really value this work by the district. And I think you mentioned the potential water savings. I really appreciate one aspect of the work is the data collection you're doing on groundwater measurement and water flowing out of the meadow. So really gives us some good public relations material. But I thought you quickly commented on the potential water savings in acre feet, but was it 400 acre feet per year?
426 is what we had calculated.
Okay.
426 acre feet is basically the potential between the current shallow aquifer. I wish I had a whiteboard.
Is there a true aquifer? That's what I want.
There is in the meadow, that's why they stay green, right?
Okay.
Many meadows, if you were a bird flying over the Sierra, you'd look down and you see the green pockets.
Right.
Well, those are green because there's moisture. And even in areas where the upper part of the channel has dewatered, we see green because there's a shallow groundwater little basin in that bowl that creates the meadow. So what we've calculated, and we're gonna have a new grad student coming up, is they're gonna put in additional wells. They're gonna check those wells like to fill in with gravels and fines, so I don't know what's functioning this year yet, to understand that delta of, if we're able to reconnect and inundate it enough, it would be 426 acre-feet of potential additional storage.
Potential addition, that's.
And then it will add to the channel as the hot summer months arrive and that main stem, those levels drop down. And once they drop down to that groundwater level, it then has inputs, and they're cold, they're clear waters that have been stored in that aquifer.
Wonderful.
It just works. It does it all on its own. We just gotta help push it back.
I like the fact too that you included the forest treatment with the project so that you're creating a larger habitat health. So I had an independent question. Are the meadows all independent of each other? Because I have gone up to Jackson Meadows and seen the really significant work seems to be done north of Jackson Meadows. But are all the meadows separate from each other in terms of the overall benefit?
So they are not connected. Like when I said English Meadow or Middle and Shotgun Meadows, they are separate, and actually they're in different watersheds. However, when you're looking at ecosystem restoration, this patchwork or refuge community concept is really important because so many species move around. So they are not connected meadows, but they're nearby.
Okay. My other comment is just that this, to me, this project is an area where we need to educate the public on the benefits of meadow restoration, because I think that forest health and meadow restoration, I think, is an area where some people consider it to be just not valued work. And so that's why I think that data collection you're going to be doing is important, and really translating what does 400 acre feet mean to the district, and really creating a better public understanding of the importance of this for watershed health and actually increasing our water supply, because I believe that that is not commonly understood.
That's a good point, Director Holland. It's a long game.
Yep.
These things, right? I mean, this is the headwaters of the Middle Fork of the Yuba. And there's a lot that goes on in the Middle Fork of the Yuba, and this is the top. If we don't take care of it, it's our property, we've owned it forever. Right. Then it's important to spend the $40,000 a year that we budgeted for it over the last 4 years. And now this grant is a perfect fit. And I think NESA and her team have done an incredible job to get us to this point. You're right, this coordination of, I call it NESA's herding a ton of cats out there. And it is a long game to be able to say, okay, you know, so it's a roughly $250,000 that the district has invested into this over the course of the last 5 years, and will do so for the next couple. But it's gonna be constant, right? It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge at some point. And all of the forestry work that we're doing, you're constantly having to go back in and adjust and change and monitor and adapt. Yeah.
And I think it would be helpful to have like a PowerPoint deck where if we're out in the community and have opportunities to speak, that if we chose, this could be a topic for presentation or at least discussion, because I just think this work is amazing, and definitely want to do my part to try to support the public advocacy for this information.
And we need to provide NESA more support, because there is lots of public funds available right now for this similar watershed restoration type work. So we need to make sure that we're in a position to be able to utilize those funds in a manner.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, and what we feel is up in these areas, doing this work is so important. but the forest hasn't been managed for so long, fire was suppressed, and now we've got this backlog of fuel where catastrophic burn would set it all back, which is why, you know, it's like the wave is now, there's tons of public funding available. We're swimming fast, we gotta get the board going now. So, you know, keep it going, and, I think this will be a project that we can share once we can take a breath at some point. I don't know when that is, with the Sierra Meadows Partnership, with, you know, Dr. Conklin, and Roger Bales out of Merced, and you see, like, everyone is working on it. I wish we had a control watershed. We don't have one that's similar enough where we can look at the work we're doing and have two sets of data to show change. You know, we don't have a control, but we have pre and post, which for restoration, that's often all you can really get.
Right.
And every resource, every reservoir, I mean, it benefits the district water supply. It really helps the main deal that we're in the water supply business, and it's a wonderful way to naturally supplement our supply.
Director Johansson.
So that begs the question, what do you need from us to start on the next two projects? And then, well, let's ask it.
Resources, time, and money.
Well, I mean,
How about that? We'll start there.
yeah, but, so maybe we need a timeline and a budget. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay, and then second question is, you're gonna plant willows in the meadow, right?
Well, we're gonna take them from here and put them here.
Are they native to that area?
Absolutely. Everything so far is on site, everything we're gonna collect and utilize.
But they're very thirsty.
Yes.
Is there something that's more drought hardy?
Well, this is just to stabilize the in-stream treatment.
Okay,
So they're already on the channel, so when we go to build something, any vegetation, whether it's willows, whether it's clumps of sedges, whatever, the topsoil, it gets pushed just to the side, you construct it, and you bring it back, and you're plugging it in, because we want to retain that native seed bank and the genetics that are in the system. So I think for now, that's where we're going. In terms of the grasses and things, we've talked about going up and do multiple years of seed collection and spreading, just using the on-site. Because there's enough high-quality material and habitat that can be the seed bank for the other areas that are really degraded and stressed. So that would be the answer.
so I've seen, I don't remember where, now the application where the willows were planted, that's all there is at this point. So they do take over.
They do, and, I'll bring that up. Leslie, I think, is on the phone also. Leslie, is the one that's kind of guiding our revegetation approach in terms of the work that Plymouth Corporation has done, and they're into, 3 and 4 decades of doing this sort of work, really focusing on the native stocks, because those are the ones that have survived and evolved and gone through droughts and wet seasons. So I don't know that we're going to increase the willows purposefully, but they will. If there's more water, we all know willows, they'll go 6 feet tomorrow.
And they'll dip into that 426 acre feet
Yeah, big time.
in a heartbeat.
Because I have a half mile creek of NID water run through my place, and the willows occupy the whole thing.
But there are beaver nearby. I saw a beaver nearby.
Okay.
We have hope that they're gonna come walk on.
We got them on the tar ditch.
Trap and truck, those beavers.
If I could, you can't.
We'll helicopter them in.
It's the old thing.
Like in the 50s.
Yeah, drop them in like the fish.
You want the beaver on the tar ditch? You can have that one.
If I could, you can't, but if I could.
Wasn't there a rumor of a muskrat or something up there?
A,
Maybe not at
Wolverine.
Wolverine, yeah.
Wow.
And maybe not at English Meadows, but
In
nearby.
that general vicinity.
I think he has a name, but I can't think of the name.
Yes, does he have a tag?
Ollie. I don't know.
Director Hull.
William.
Lisa, does the potential of, well, as we see climate change in that area having potentially more effect in terms of less snowfall and more rain, does it make a difference in terms of the amount of water storage and how the meadow functions?
I would have to say yes. I don't have any data, but just my sense of kind of ecosystem processes and being so driven by water and water availability in a wet environment, I would say yes. But I would think as healthy and functional or robust as we can make it, it has a much better chance to survive it. But I'm sure it'll have drying trends and other species, you know, that's what's happening. We're seeing these shifts due to climate change, during extreme heat events, all these things, pockets of forest dying off.
Right.
All sorts of things happening. So things will change, yes.
But kind of an unknown.
But I'm sure the work we're doing and the monitoring that we put in place will just help to, you know, we're going to be monitoring for trends. That's what we're looking for. Whether it's changes in the groundwater, changes in the stream flow. We've already put in forest transects or plots. We'll do the same in the meadow. So we'll just get to know it. And from this point forward, we can annually go up and look at it and say, what's it look like this year? What are the trends?
Yeah, thank you.
Any more comments from directors? Okay, at this time are you finished? I jumped the gun, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
And I look forward to a field trip.
Me too.
It's a beautiful place if you haven't been there.
Truly.
This time, we're going to open the discussion for a public hearing. If you would like to comment today on the proposal for the floodplain restoration English Meadow, star 9 your phone. Any comment today? There we go. Diana, go ahead. This is Diana Suarez.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I want to congratulate you on this incredible project and just remind you that the public would like to go on a field trip as well. Thank you.
Okay. You can go along.
Take the pristine out of
Thank you.
pristine.
Anybody else like to comment today on the proposed project in English Meadows, restoration project? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
And I'll make a motion that we adopt a mitigated negative declaration approving the project and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, NID English Meadow Floodplain Restoration and Enhancement Project, and authorize the general manager to execute it.
I'll second.
I think we all second.
We all second.
Just to clarify, I didn't hear adopt resolution.
We need a resolution
Adopting
number.
the resolution.
2021-25.
Adopting resolution 2021-25.
Okay, I heard Director Heck first, I think, so she goes.
I heard that.
Okay. All right, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Division 1.
Yes.
Division 3. Aye. Division 5.
Yes.
Division 4. Aye. Division 2.
Aye. Thank you, Nasa.
Fabulous,
That was exciting.
Nisa. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay.
And I guess you're up for the next item also.
Here we go, next
Here we
one.
go,
So
next
the
one.
next one is a staff recommendation that we move forward and we apply for the grant to the Wildlife Conservation Board. It is through their Forest Conservation Grant Program. We are requesting $1.2 million in grant funding. I've provided to you a budget essentially of $40,000 annually for the next 3 years that we would provide in addition to staff time to administer the grants. That's a very common process we're using for basically leveraging our investment with the grant dollars. We're requesting $1.2 million at Proposition 68 funding.
No?
No questions.
Are you ready for, oh, no, we need public.
Public
We need
comment.
public. We got.
Did you have a comment?
No,
question?
let's,
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Did any member of the public like to comment on that grant application? the Wildlife Conservation Board for English Meadows Floodplain Restoration Project. Star 9 your phone. Easy meeting today. Last chance, if you'd like to comment today on the grant application to the Wildlife Conservation Board, English Meadow Restoration Project. Star 9 your phone. Okay.
Public comment closed.
Public comment is closed.
Okay, Mr. President, with that, I would like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-26, approving the application for grant funds for the Wildlife Conservation Board for the English Meadow Floodplain Enhancement and Restoration Project, and authorize the general manager to execute the appropriate documents.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion from the board? Madam Secretary, will call the roll, please.
Division 1,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4, Division 2.
Aye. Hey, thank you, Nasa.
Thank you, Nasa.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Really great.
This is a very
Great.
exciting new front.
It is.
Good luck in August.
We will work on a.
Now let's get more.
It's gonna be up there the
Her
whole
new
summer.
office.
Yeah.
Let's get more.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
All right, last item on the agenda, number 11, Local Agency Formation Commission. This is to fill out a ballot. I don't know.
Vote for
Chris, you gonna
one
speak
out
to
of
this,
two.
Or Jennifer, or anybody gonna speak to this?
Yes, so this ballot came from our Nevada County LAFCo. There is an open position on the board for special district member, and 2 were nominated by special districts in the area. And I believe the term for this ends in July or so.
2024.
There you go, July 20, yes. And so I'm looking to the board if they wanted to vote for one of these
So
members.
there's vote for one, not two.
Vote for one,
Right. Vote for
one of
one.
the 2 that were nominated, yes.
Okay, that, now I know, now I have direction.
That's the ballot.
So, who would like to,
Well,
make a proposal? Rich?
so both in Division 5, and both are outstanding candidates.
Oh, gee, make it easy for us, Rich.
No, I mean, it's a little bit difficult because they both bring quite a bit to the table. Mine, and I've been wrangling over this one for a while.
Okay. Since I don't recognize either name, you'll have.
It's filling the seat of Kurt Grungdo, who was on LAFCo for 15 years, has been the chair forever, and he was on the fire district board of Penn Valley. Gordon Mango is on the fire district board. He's also a customer of NID. I think Nancy is too. Nancy's more with the recreation. I would tend to go with the fire representative. So I would nominate Gordon Mando.
Okay.
Now, my comment is I read the resumes and talked to a couple folks, and my sense after this was to, I would nominate Nancy Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Now, you made it easier too.
I know.
In those conversations, what characteristics jumped out at you as being the better choice? And maybe the same question to Rich.
Well,
Your guy versus.
yeah, I'll go first. I mean,
Yeah.
so, I know that Gordon, his community is a customer of NID and is organized that whole community of 30 participants into an orderly customer. They really take care of business within his little area. I've seen the work on the board, the fire board, very respectful. He's been on the grand jury. He has a pretty good, really good background. Nancy, the Western Gateway, has kept that going on a budget that I think the budget less than 170 some people in the county make on a yearly basis, and she's kept that Western Gateway going and really done a tremendous job and is highly respected. It's a toss-up.
It's a toss-up.
Well, and, you know, what impressed me about her was, that she really initiated a lot of hard work. For instance, you know, she took on and sat at the gate herself at Western Gateway Park to collect $2 per car, so that there would be money there, right? Non-paid, just as a volunteer. And, you know, and doing the parent work on these various boards that she's done, it's like herding cats, you know? And to do that and come out of that experience being well respected, usually you serve on school boards and park boards and everybody hates you at the end. And that's not true. People really respect her. So, you know, that was why. And she just came highly recommended. And I don't have a lot of information about the other gentleman, so you know, other than reading the resume, which is, you know, impressive.
Yeah.
And he seems like a good guy. So, I know, it's hard, so. Oh, and I know the other thing about Nancy is that she was appointed to the MAC. She was appointed to the MAC by Supervisor Weston back, I don't know what.
When it was first formed. Yeah.
When it was first formed.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she has this unique thing of, you know, county and business volunteerism and parenting and herding cats and, you know, I just felt like, and she wants to do this, that's cool. You know, this is sort of a progression in her volunteer service, so.
It's her board that has nominated her.
Yeah, and it was her own board that nominated her. Thank you for that.
Can I ask a question about what exactly does this role do? If you're a LAFCo, what are the responsibilities?
We are one.
You have two on the board.
Yeah.
You have two on the board.
What do you do? I mean,
We're still figuring it out.
Yeah, we are still figuring it out.
But what kind of decisions do you make? I mean, what's the skill set you need?
Annexations.
Annexation.
Annexation planning, land use.
Divisions of different, I don't know if we're the fight the judge.
Oversee municipal service reviews.
Yeah.
So that one special district and one service district is not overlapping another.
Orderly government.
There's an orderly.
Between jurisdictions.
Right, and so a skill would be, you want to be able to understand all the different communities involved and what's going on in each of these, and having a broad understanding of.
Do they meet regularly or as needed?
Once every 2 months.
Every 3 months.
Or 3 months?
Yeah.
3 months.
I thought it was
So
every.
Or as needed.
Not a lot of business.
2 months?
Yeah, it is, because
I
we
just
just
show
had
up
one
on-
in June and we got another one in August.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just as a point of reference, Director Peters, the annexation that we just approved today will go through to this
We'll go through LAFCo,
LAFCo
right.
process.
And they're an overseer, so that if someone else was trying to do something, then they can make sure there's not conflicts or boundaries.
Yeah, I understand the general thing of LAFCO, but I'm trying to think of the skill set needed. in this.
Oh, the skill set.
You know, I understand what it does, I was trying to understand what are the skill sets that would benefit that?
Yeah, go ahead. I was thinking, the capacity, the time, but also just the experience of working with multiple groups with different,
They're elected from boards.
they're elected
They're
from
not-
boards,
not-
so everybody has a different agenda,
Right.
you know? Like, we are NID, so we're NID, and we have to set that aside and keep LAFCO as our primary, but nevertheless, we have an NID bias.
We better.
I know, and alliance bias, and, and so everybody that comes to this is coming from a different agency. So the skill set, as I see it, is understanding the interplay of these different agencies and being able to work together as opposed to.
The one thing I haven't seen right now with Kurt off is there's no one from fire. And that's.
I thought there was somebody from fire.
I went through, no, that's Gordon Mandel, but I'm saying.
How many people are on this board?
If you look at this letter right here, it's on the left side of here.
Okay.
I thought this was missing somebody here.
Oh.
This,
This page.
No.
This page.
yeah, there you go. That's who's on it right now.
Yeah, there's nobody from fire.
Well, there's also nobody from Parks or Rec or
Yeah, no,
schools or
exactly.
anything else.
But for a long time,
Fire help, yeah,
Fire
fire.
was everybody.
Fire was everybody.
Okay.
There was a history here where fire was, everybody that was on that
Yeah.
LAFCo board came from some fire district.
And I support the fire candidate.
Okay.
And I, you know,
And it's it's county-wide, it's not just Nevada City, it's not just western Nevada County, it
It's,
represents eastern Nevada
they'll
County.
get
Right.
the sanitation districts of Truckee and,
Yeah.
yeah.
so,
Okay. Who wants to?
pleasure of the board.
Pleasure
I
of the
mean,
board.
Yeah.
Well, we have two motions.
We don't
have
have
no
any-
second.
We don't have any motion.
I guess we need to make a motion and then see if there's a second.
Well, I just was giving a comment as
Oh,
my preference.
I made a motion.
So wait,
You made a motion?
I didn't hear it.
what, Karen was
I
saying?
was gonna say, Ricky is our kind of representative on the board, and she, to me, you have the greatest knowledge of what's needed, and you did some outreach to contact people, got a referral, so I wouldn't be inclined to make a motion to go with Nancy.
Okay.
And you made one too,
And he made,
We'll have a second.
And I also did the same outreach, but I know them both personally.
yeah, so, yeah,
There you go.
Rich may have to recuse.
Okay, well-
himself, you know.
Okay, so we'll take,
Let's just,
What just happened?
rule clarification.
Yes, let's do that.
Rich had a motion on the table. Is there a second to that motion?
so I didn't even hear his motion.
Oh, I said I'd moved to have
Oh,
Gordon
you moved to have,
Mango as.
okay.
Okay, is there a second to
There
the
was not a second at the time, because then I chimed in on Nancy.
Is there a second to Rich's motion? Well, I could second it.
You could second it.
Second it. I'll second it. Typically, my training president didn't participate in the vote, right? He broke ties here,
Well,
he can participate, so. I'll second Rich's motion. Okay,
There
is
you
there any
go.
further discussion? No public comment, yeah, thank you. At this time, is there any public comment on the motion to support Gordon Mangel, is that how you say it?
Mango.
Mangle, for the position on the LAFCo board? Any public comment starting on your phone? Okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 1,
No.
Division 3,
No.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
No.
Division 2.
Yes. Okay, now I'll entertain a new motion.
Okay, I would move,
Director Holmes,
please,
you want to make that, or just Director Ham?
no, I will move that,
Okay,
our board nominate Nancy Pierce from the Western Gateway Recreation and Park District to serve on the LAFCO board for, the districts, the special district member.
okay,
I'll
second. Moved and seconded that we support Nancy Pierce. No, this is an election, or we are the electing?
No, we're nominating
We're
her.
nominating for the election.
We're nominating.
Okay.
Casting a vote.
Yeah.
For nominating
Well, we're
Nancy
actually
Pierce for
voting.
the position on the LAFCO.
Yeah, and they need 12 votes.
And so this is our vote, this is NID's vote.
Okay, that's how it works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All right.
should have made that clearer, actually, but.
All right. Is there any public comment on nominating Nancy Pierce to be on the LAFCO board? Start on your phone? Okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 1,
Yes?
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye,
Okay,
thank you for
thank you,
a
everyone.
robust process.
That was fun.
Okay,
Yeah, you can't go wrong with it.
No, you couldn't go wrong with either one.
we could have just flipped a coin.
Yeah?
We were looking for one,
Don't we have that in our bylaws?
probably.
Flip a coin?
Yeah.
Okay, next up is the general manager's report.
Thank you, President Muirwagen. There's just a couple of really brief items. I'm gonna just touch on, something that is real fun, and then we'll turn over the microphone to Chip to provide some additional information on current water storage. So I just want to remind the board that we do have the Nevada County Fair coming up, And the board had previously determined to not have a meeting on opening day of the fair due to the breakfast. But Chris, can you confirm the breakfast invitation?
Yes, I'm actually waiting to confirm back from the fairgrounds, but I have also been reaching out to the board members to see if they were intending to attend.
Perfect.
So I can get a count and then make sure we've got it.
Excellent. So that should be well attended. And then also, NID is planning on having a real special booth this year in honor of the 100-year celebration. I know we have had some discussions regarding the district's 100th year in existence, and one of those big parts of that celebration is going to be at the fair this year. So staff's been working on a real special booth to celebrate that item. And if there's no more questions regarding that, was going to turn it over to Chip, and he was just going to provide a real quick update on water storage.
I have a question on the centennial celebration, because at one time Greg had presented kind of an idea of what we would be doing, and I don't really know where we are with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've truncated it quite a bit. So, as of now, we've actually focused only on the booth at the fairground, at the Nevada County Fairground.
Okay.
So, saving some money and just truncating it, given the fact that, it's a drought and there's all sorts of other activities going on. We're sort of walking that back. We've been doing some releases. We do have things like our 100-year book that's coming out. We'll be presenting that. We anticipate going to specific, entities. For instance, we reached out from Nevada County Board of Supervisors yesterday. We're hoping to go and present the book to the supervisors, as well as Nevada County, Placer County, and some other dignitaries. But the fair is really kind of our community-focused booth, as well as it's going to have a large presence of conservation and drought, water efficiency activities. So.
And then there was also a request from President Bierwagen to actually have a real discussion about the 100-year celebration, and so I was planning on bringing it back at the next board meeting, so we could put it on the agenda.
That answers my question perfect.
Yeah, I think some of the staff's concerns are related to, just to kind of plant the seed a little bit, related to large expenditures related to a party when we're charging additional drought surcharge right now.
Mm-hmm.
That off.
Yeah, it was
The
not,
optics were
terrible.
looking a little.
yeah,
And combining, and throwing in water rates, by the way.
yeah.
I think pay for our parking, doesn't work.
No, it does not work.
I think everybody recognizes it, the community's realizing it, it's just, the staff is realizing it. But the party aspect that we were gonna have it, I think it was Scotts Flat, Orchard Springs was just a little too big, too much, so we cut down.
Thank you.
We get our lunches back?
Wasn't there an open house? Wasn't there an open house? There wasn't be
Yeah.
where people could come to the,
We had that.
here and they could have an open, I thought that's what we were gonna do, was have an open house here.
So that was an original, sorry.
No, I just,
That-
going to say
Yeah, that
the
was,
same thing I am.
it was an original item, and an idea. It became a lot of effort for staff to put that together as well.
Yeah, that's.
It was a pretty heavy lift.
I also think with the COVID restrictions that just recently been lifted, I think that idea kind of fell by the wayside, given that for a long time we couldn't even entertain doing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're supposed to have some more discussion about
Yeah, that's.
doing something. We need to do something. If the fair is deemed enough, anyway. For the 28th.
Even invite some key people into a board meeting. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, next time. Thank you.
Okay. Chip?
Okay, thank you. As we had discussed in our previous meetings regarding drought, staff promised to come back and provide you guys a normal update. So our effort in doing so, I set the copies on your desk. And the first slide is the Bowman Lake precipitation report, and there's not much to report, which is not surprising. All right, thanks, my time's done.
I have a question about this report.
Yes.
You know, the typical water year is October 1st to September 30th. Why are we on a June 30th, July 1st?
Okay, there's two different types of water years.
Yeah.
and forgive me, I don't remember which is which and why the dates are different, but that's why. This is how we do the tracking for precipitation for water rights in different years, so.
Oh, okay, so this has always been our calendar.
Yes, this has always been the water year for us.
Huh,
It's regularly in the news, July 1st.
that's interesting, because most
The
of
water year versus the precipitation year, I think is the difference.
Oh,
Precipitation is July 1st through June 30th.
interesting.
Yeah,
Good to know.
it's funny. But basically what this slide shows is that we ended the precipitation year at 34.10 inches of rain, just a very bleak number. It's really weird to see that the right-hand half of that graph just flatline like that. That is very, very unusual. Not great. The next slide shows our NID reservoir storage, and as you already are seeing, the blue shaded area is our average. The red line is where we are currently at this year, which is 77% of our 8-year average and 67% of overall capacity. The next slide you might find a little interesting. So I threw this together, I'm thinking about putting this on the webpage to keep the public up to speed on where we're at and how they're doing as a whole in conservation efforts. But what this shows is basically that same storage graph with the blue shaded area of our average. And then as you remember, when we talked about drought, we showed these 3 different lines. The purple dashed line was where we anticipate ending the season after we buy PG&E water. The yellow line is where we anticipate being if we save 20%. And the, kind of an orange, sorry, the really yellow one is 30%. You can see at the peak of the graph there, the red line has now started overriding those dashed lines, and what you're seeing is that we are actually riding at about the 20% saved mark.
We're tracking 20%.
We're doing pretty darn good, and
That's good.
that's a little bit of our customer base, a little bit of our tight running the system, but regardless, we're getting there, we're starting to see some action, so that's good.
And you'll know more in 2 weeks?
Yes, absolutely. Every time, we'll come back to this board and give you an update. I can also say that the voluntary reductions from our ag customer base continue to trickle in. We're at 105 miners inches now of voluntary reductions, which is great.
Wow. It's 1,000 acre feet?
Well, normally it would be 1,000 acre feet, but
It's
because
total.
we're halfway through the year already, it's 500.
Yeah.
But regardless, we'll take it, and we appreciate the efforts. So anyway.
Can I ask a question? Because Laura and I were talking about this, and with a voluntary reduction, is a customer bound to that voluntary reduction through the duration of the drought, or can they withdraw their voluntary reduction if their condition changes?
We have had folks try voluntarily to reduce, and they couldn't manage, and so we allowed them to go down.
Okay.
Okay, our resolution doesn't say that.
It doesn't, it's absent on that, but at the same time, we didn't really put mandatory reductions in for the entire raw water, so it seems silly to put the clamps down on somebody who was trying to do the right thing.
Our resolution says that if you voluntarily reduce, you cannot get it back until the end of the drought.
Yeah.
You won't get back your normal allotment, okay, that's fair. I've only had one customer ask that so far.
Well, we reduced from 6 to 5.
Yeah.
And we're having a hard time keeping our pond full.
Yeah.
We're just going through so much more water than ever before.
Yeah. So the intent of the resolution was to state that you couldn't go back to your normal allotment the next year until drought was clear. That's really what the intent was. It wasn't about if you voluntarily reduce right now, you can't, and realize you can't make it, you can't go back. We didn't get into that kind of detail in the resolution. I read it that way, interpretation, so I appreciate that aspect.
My question is, on the voluntary cutbacks, is that you're actually getting pieces of paper in the office that say that they're gonna, the little slips are coming back in, or is that happening? How are you tracking that?
So we ask them to call in or write in to ask for the formal request, and we document it on every account.
Okay, so I need to do that. I've been fuzzy about it, haven't done it. I go, I'm just doing it. I'm already just doing it, right?
Yeah, might as well get the credit for it.
All right.
So what is our formal interpretation of that?
Well, if you
We
guys.
can look into it further. This is just the informational items that I'm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was surprised to see that. I thought that So if someone gave it up this year, that it would automatically reset to their full allotment next year, even if a drought had not been.
No, so I believe the resolution reads that if you voluntarily reduce, you are welcome to go back to your full allotment whenever drought is clear. What people were concerned with is that if they reduced, they would never get back their original purchased amount.
Right, but
We
this
wanted
says,
to reassure them that that is not the case, and as soon as drought is over, you can go back to your original allotment.
Right.
It wasn't really necessarily designed for the folks that were volunteering right away and realized they couldn't make it. But I realize now that if you read it that way, I totally.
well, and then if we're in a drought next year,
Yes.
then that, you know, given it up. What we're finding is that agricultural practices determine how much water you use, and the crops you grow will determine how much water one uses. And it's a lot more intensive at the farm this year than it ever has been.
And just for the additional context, when we were at the Farm Bureau meeting last week, multiple ranchers said that they would reduce, you know, beginning in September through the end of the season. Now, you may be already adjusting for that, but I just think that the point is an important one. So, and because people asked, well, can we go back to our full allotment when we need it in spring? And so, you know, it's up to you guys to, you know, kind of.
The resolution states pretty clearly.
Yeah, we're getting a little far out there on this particular item, but let me go ahead and take a look at it, and we'll coordinate amongst staff and provide some feedback.
Yeah.
But isn't this something we're gonna look at in 2 weeks with the enforcement and also the little bit of the drought?
I don't know that at that time we were going to be proposing a resolution change, but if needed, we certainly can.
Gotcha.
Okay, so any questions on this particular slide? I think it might be worthwhile to start to look at the drought page.
I think so too.
So people
Yeah.
can see the target, see how we're doing in real time, and encourage folks to continue. And then likewise, the next slide is our treated water usage comparison. And as we had talked about in the past, we weren't receiving the conservation we were looking for, but I'm happy to report that in the month of June, people are really starting to get the message and cutting back now. And you can see that's reflected in that red line. Finally, going into the blue shaded area, it shows that in June, we conserved 8%, but that is as compared to 2013.
Right.
Unfortunately, when you take 2021's overall usage for the entire year to date, we have actually used more, 11% more than we did in 2020 up to this time. But we're hopeful the message is getting out there and things will continue on the right path from here forward. So, and then we'll post this guy on the web so people can get an idea, treated water customers can get an idea of where they're at.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Thank you, Chip.
Thank you.
And is that all for you, Jennifer? Okay.
Public comment?
I don't know that.
No,
Public comment.
no, I know that one.
Those are tricks.
Okay,
I'm trying to trip you up.
yeah, he is. I'm multitasking.
You've doubled down on him. Okay.
So, director's comments. Who would like to go first? Karen?
I was tag teaming with Laura last week, so we went to a fabulous tour with Kean and Greg to our hydro facilities. It was fantastic, learned so much, and just really appreciated seeing some of the inner workings, the complexity, got to meet some of the staff, and that was really nice, see their offices up there. And then we went to Laura and I attended the Placer County Farm Bureau meeting, and they have a really wonderful program because they have a legislative update that's very informative, and they have the Placer County Farm Advisor, Ag Commission is there talking about things that they're doing, so you really see the integration between our work, the district's work, and these other groups, and anyway, very interesting.
Good. Dr. Peters?
I concur. I did the same thing with Karen on July 6th on the Placer County Farm Bureau and the 8th on the hydro tour. It was very interesting to go see those power facilities. And then on July 12th, I attended the West Placer Streams Technical Advisory Meeting. It was a Zoom meeting. I'm really looking forward to this being an in-person meeting. But it's a coalition of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency or Administration, puts it on. They provide staffing to bring people together to talk about streams and specifically focusing on the Western Placer Stream that have anadromous fish potential. So there's many of them, and they're also coordinating with Placer County, the Department of Water Resources, with the Water Board, with the NGOs. It's a big group of people that are all very interested in habitat restoration in Western Placer County. And so they had a really interesting presentation on the Link Engaging Station, which NID sponsored, and it's our facility. And we do it in coordination with the Friends of Auburn Ravine, who have put amazing volunteer hours to monitor. They put panels down and cameras, and so they see the fish swimming above, and then they see the fish going sideways, and so they can count all the fish that go up past that station in Auburn Ravine. And then Hewlett-Packard, they have a program at Hewlett-Packard where staff can have personal projects of interest. And so one of their staff has taken this as their personal project of interest because it's hours and hours of camera. So they take 24 hours a day, they run these cameras, and they pull the the data every couple weeks or certain intervals. And then they have volunteers, and they speed it up to make it so you can watch a whole 24 hours in 4 hours. When you're watching the same station for 4 hours, it's phenomenal, the volunteer effort that these people step forward to do. And they also have volunteers that walk the ravine and look for fish, and if there's dead fish, they actually take samples of them for tracking. And it's a very scientific process. It's incredible. It's an incredible public participation project. In fact, Hewlett-Packard has a worldwide conference every year, and they select either 4 or 6 of these community projects that staff have. And this year, this project was on their international conference to show everybody the good work that Hewlett-Packard is doing to help local communities. So it's a fantastic group. It's a fantastic goals and objectives, and it's working with the Placer County Environmental Health, because they have the Placer County Habitat Conservation Plan that they're just implementing now. And so it's kind of helping to guide that. It's just a fantastic group, and so I'm really grateful to be part of it.
Cool.
Director Heck.
Hi there. Yeah, I have had an abundance, a very positive abundance of constituent calls and meetings, and have been quite busy doing that. And then I've also continued to get constituent calls about Rise Gold. So I'm going to renew my request to please bring forward a presentation on what NID has agreed to, if anything, with Rise Gold in terms of providing water, how many connections and what the economic terms are. And there's so much misinformation that's being floated around out there. So what I have told people is just hold on, let's let our staff do the work, and let's have a presentation, find out just exactly where we are and get the real data. So this is something I think is going to be really important for our community to understand NID's role, if any, in this proposal. It's heated up here pretty significantly in my world.
The whole paper on Saturday was all on Rise Gold.
Boy.
Yeah.
So, thank you, staff, if you can do that. I know Chip knows a lot, but I've tried to not ask you anything, because I don't want to piecemeal it. I just think it'd be good to get a full-on presentation about where we are, what we've done, what we haven't done, what we're being asked to do, those things. Thanks.
Director Johansson.
So, has there been activity that we need to know about?
No, we were supposed to piecemeal this, right?
No, not piecemeal.
We're
We just did.
This item's not on the agenda.
And it's not on the agenda. This is your
Not on the
report.
but I just, we need to know. 'Cause it's just not, Director Heck's
World.
district and division, 'cause that water goes everywhere. So let's see, Chris and I went out one morning just to show him the water tender situation in Division 5, and we met about 6:30, and about 6:34, here was the nice wagon with 3 totes of water all broken down. And it was treated water. And about an hour later, after you had left, the pickup came back and they were trying to fix the broken axle, and get that trailer. And they got the trailer off the road. So getting a lot of phone calls and a lot of unmarked, water tenders. No name on the door, no license plates. And a lot of calls about concerned people who were just saying, hey, we've had enough of this. There's just too many. Or somebody is marked. But yesterday, Mountain Enterprises beautifully marked everything, had the paperwork, using the meter. Way to go. It was fantastic. But we're seeing a lot of just new water tenders everywhere, and we're seeing a lot of pickups with totes in the back. So, and after you had left, there was just
Is it all from one same hydrant?
They're going different hydrants.
I know, but, okay. It would be just interesting to know where to go.
If you really want
If
to
one
see
wanted to come and
Commercial Drive.
spy,
Commercial Drive, there's 2 hydrants there.
Commercial Drive.
Yeah, near, down at Penn Valley.
Right.
South Pleasant Valley. Yeah, you'll get it. So, and then also Pleasant Valley Road next to John Bourne.
Mhm.
That seems to be a favorite. There's a few others. Huh? You may not get this in Placer County. We're getting it more and more, and people are, and one guy had a rental, but he was happy. It was on I think it was on the 12th, but he had just got his permit. And he was doing it all right. And he said, no, we're building a new house. And it was great. But I just want to know, there's tremendous activity and a lot of people are calling. So last night went to Rough and Ready Fire Department, last week Penn Valley Fire Department. Tonight is the Penn Valley Community Center meeting. Tomorrow night is Penn Valley Municipal Advisory Committee, MAC. And so just people are aware of water shortages and they're concerned and they don't want anybody taking water that they shouldn't have. Also, numerous calls, contacts from Thoroughbred Loop. But basically, they realize it's not an NID problem. But
what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
I know, you're not,
well,
it's like, what are you talking about?
huh?
Stealing water, right?
At Thoroughbred Loop?
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody owns the land, but not the water, but using the water. And that's all I want to say. The people who are buying the water aren't getting the water.
They're pulling water out of our canals?
No. Well, that's happening too, but I saw a pump today in one of our canals.
I would just remind the board that one real good tool that we do have in our toolbox is the water hotline, so that if there are actual incidents that are reportable, if the public could call those into the hotline, then we could dispatch staff as appropriate.
Customer service has been stellar.
Good.
Incredible. They know what they're doing, they get the information, boom. Yeah.
So is it our responsibility to monitor all these hydrants, or is it the fire district's responsibility?
It's our water.
It's our water, but is it and I guess it's our hydrants too.
They're our hydrants.
Which shouldn't be our hydrants, but.
Well, the fire.
That's another discussion.
Right, we were requested to bring an item back as part of the July 28th discussion related to enforcement of the drought resolution, and we can kind of tee this conversation up as well during that conversation.
Okay. And I'm kind of teeing it up right now. The fire marshal has made requests also.
Yeah.
Because he can't do his job.
We're the only one in this game, that's crazy. If we're the only one patrolling this, that's crazy.
Only one.
Patrolling it.
Enforcing or.
Oh, no,
doing anything about it.
you can't bring the cadre of people out there looking.
We need some ring cameras.
I get texts going, hey,
Critter camp.
this guy's at this meter, he just told me to, so why don't you approach him? You know, it's getting a little testy.
That it, Director Johansson? Done? Thank you.
It better be.
Okay.
You bet.
All right, so for me, all I've done is attended the Farm Bureau, Nevada County Farm Bureau picnic on Sunday. It was a little too hot for folks. It was poorly attended, but still made some connections with people there, so.
Good. You deserve an award.
Yeah, Mike, there's a piece of cake for me. The heat, yeah,
It was hot.
Ex-president.
I'm a lizard.
Right. Well, I
I'm a
called,
lizard.
just for everybody, I called Chris, Director Beer Wagon. I called Director Beer Wagon and said I had RSVP'd that it was my intention to go, but it was so hot. And I'm just not somebody that does well in the heat, and so I got a presidential pardon. So he represented all of us there.
That's right, thank you, Chris.
Yes. All right. At this time, we'll take public comment for items to be considered in closed session. Welcome back to the dais, Mike.
Good to you all.
I know, you too.
Mike Basner, Indian Springs Organic Farm, farmer with NID water for 35 years. As you head into your closed session, I hope you will discuss your responsibility and liability on the Pilot Peak tar ditch encroachment. That's it.
Oh, but we don't even know if that's the subject of this.
Neither do I.
Oh, okay.
It's got it covered.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Anyone else like to comment on items to be considered in closed session? Starting on your phone. Last chance, if you'd like to comment one last time today, items to be considered in closed session, start on your phone. Okay, seeing none, we will close the open session to closed session.
And this will conclude our Zoom today.
This will conclude our.
Is there a report out, or?
Where'd you go? Right when we need it.
There will be no reportable action.
There will be no reportable action today.
Thank you so much.
And on that, we will take a 5-minute break before closed session.
Okay.